I stood on the playground of Beijing City High School Number 1, surrounded by 10,000 students. On the high stage, a short, chubby boy with a face full of acne held his right hand high. His face was flushed, beet red as he screamed at the top of his lungs. I will definitely get into the Holy Martial Warrior Academy. I will definitely get into the Holy Martial Warrior Academy. I watched him from the crowd and let out a long sigh. I never expected that in this world, a place where reality had merged with a data-driven game, there would still be something as cringy as a 100-day oath ceremony. I was a traveler. 3 years ago, I woke up in this world that looked almost exactly like my old home, Earth. But here, the rules were different. The game had descended, and everyone's life was quantified by data. It was an era of class awakening. Ferocious beasts, dungeons, and secret realms popped up everywhere in the wild. Everyone had a status panel, and at 18, we all underwent a class change to determine our future careers. School still existed, but we didn't study math or literature anymore. We studied beast encyclopedias and skill breakdowns. The college entrance exam was still the most important event of our lives. It decided if you became an elite scholar, a regular civilian, or a desperate wilderness hunter roaming the dangerous wastes. With only 100 days left until the exam, the school organized this ceremony. Representatives from every class had to go up and shout their goals. It was supposed to be inspiring, but to someone like me who had lived 2 lives, it was so awkward I wanted to dig a hole and hide. Suddenly, a crisp notification rang in my head. Asterisk ding. You have a new task. Please check it. Asterisk. My golden finger was acting up again. I raised an eyebrow and pulled up my task panel. Glowing text appeared in the air, visible only to me. Asterisk available tasks asterisk. Asterisk option 1. Interrupt the student on stage and shout, "You'll never make it." Reward, steel broom. A mundane item made of solid steel. Not a weapon, but using it might give you massive biceps or chronic shoulder pain. Asterisk. Asterisk option 2. Stay silent and applaud to encourage your classmate. Reward, +1 charisma, asterisk. I looked at the rewards and felt a wave of boredom. This task panel had been with me since I arrived. It triggered randomly, giving me 2 or 3 choices. The tasks were never hard, and the rewards ranged from stat points to cash, gear, or useless junk like steel brooms. Thanks to this system, I had already accumulated nearly 50 points in charisma. It had turned me into the most famous school grass, the ultimate heartthrob of Beijing City. The occasional cash rewards also made my life as an orphan pretty comfortable. I didn't even have to think about it. I chose option 2. It wasn't that I was obsessed with being handsome, I just didn't want to crush the poor kid's dreams. As the boy finished his oath, I joined the crowd in clapping. The task completed instantly, and I felt a subtle shift as my charisma ticked up by 1. The boy bowed, panting, and hurried off stage to make room for the next speaker. Beside me stood a guy built like a brick wall. His name was Go Sheng, a level 13 shield warrior and one of my best friends. He nudged me hard, looking excited. "Old Lu, look, the next one up is my goddess, Chiohi." He grabbed my sleeve, his eyes sparkling. She doesn't come from a rich family, but she's the undisputed civilian goddess of our school. She's always smiling, and her eyes curve like little crescents when she talks. One look at her, and my heart just melts. Go Sheng glanced at me, then paused, squinting. "Wait, old Lu, is it just me, or did you get even more handsome since this morning?" I kept a straight face. "I get a little better looking every day. It's normal." "You're so annoying," Go Sheng muttered, though he nodded in agreement. He had watched me transform over the last 2 years. Back in 10th grade, I was just a decent-looking guy. Now, my looks, my build, and my vibe were on a different level. Every girl who saw me seemed to fall under a spell. Go Sheng had no idea it was all thanks to my stacked charisma points. A girl in a crisp, clean uniform stepped onto the stage. She wore no makeup and had her hair in a high ponytail. She wasn't a world-class beauty, but she had that pure, first love aura that every high school boy dreamed about. "Look, old Lu, that's her." Go Sheng was like a cat staring at a bowl of cream. I glanced up but didn't feel much. My desk was already overflowing with love letters every day from girls even prettier than her. I just wanted this ceremony to end so I could go grind some levels before the big exam. The crowd went wild the moment she appeared. The simps below were clapping so hard their palms probably bled. But Chiohi looked distracted. She wasn't listening to the applause. Her eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for someone. When her gaze landed on me, her face lit up. She actually beamed. "Hello, everyone," she said into the microphone, her eyes locked onto mine. "I'm Chiohi, representing Class 18. I'm honored to be here to share my oath." She paused. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. The boys in the front row were practically swooning at how cute she looked. She waited 3 long seconds, clenched her fists, and took a deep breath. "Lin Yuan," she shouted with all her courage. "I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" The playground fell into a deathly silence. Then, a roar of excitement and shock erupted, loud enough to tear the roof off the school. The civilian goddess had just confessed her love in front of the entire student body. It was insanity. A chorus of heartbroken wails rose from the crowd. "Chiohi, you're confused. Why him? Am I not good enough? I don't accept this." But then they looked at me. It was Lin Yuan, the undisputed #1 heartthrob of high school #1. Suddenly, their protests lost all their steam. I looked at the crowd and realized the logic was simple. If Lin Yuan and Chiohi were together, they were a perfect match. The guys who worshipped her felt they stood no chance anyway, and the girls who were obsessed with me were just glad I was still single. The playground became a chaotic mess of shouting matches. Up on the podium, the school leaders looked like they had swallowed flies. Their faces were grim. I hadn't expected Chiohi to pull a stunt this massive. Beside me, Chunwei, or Dog Sheng, as we called him, stood with his mouth hanging open wide enough to swallow an egg. After a long silence, he looked at me with tears welling up in his eyes. "Old Lin, I was still trying to figure out how to accidentally bump into my goddess, and you've already raided the base behind my back. Tell me, when did you two get together?" "Get together?" I searched my brain for any memory of this girl. I don't even know her. The only times we spoke were when she tried to give me love letters after school. I rejected her every time. "You rejected my goddess?" Chunwei looked even more devastated. "Why didn't you tell me?" "So many girls have rejected me that I can't keep track," I said flatly. "How was I supposed to know she was your goddess?" Chunwei fell silent, looking up at Chiohi. She was still standing there, waiting, her eyes full of hope. He couldn't bear it. "She's waiting for your answer. Hurry up and say something." "Say what?" I glanced at him, annoyed. He wiped his eyes, looking like a martyr. "Accept her. She confessed in front of everyone. If you turn her down, she'll lose face. If she cries, my heart will break." I stared at him for a long time until I couldn't hold it back anymore. "I'm not calling you Dogshing anymore. From now on, your name is Simp King." "Simp King? What's that?" He looked confused through his tears. I didn't bother explaining. I just wanted to wait for her to finish her little show so I could leave. Doing this in front of the school board wasn't romantic. It was a disaster. She might want to get suspended, but I certainly didn't. The best move was to act like this had nothing to do with me. Suddenly, a familiar sound pinged in my head. Asterisk ding. "You have a new mission. Please check." Asterisk. Another one. I opened the mission panel. Asterisk current available missions, asterisk asterisk 1. Accept Chiohi's confession. Reward. 1 bottle of ever-standing pill. A man stays up, a woman never runs. That asterisk asterisk 2. Reject Chiohi's confession. Reward. Hidden job, sword immortal, asterisk. I froze. A hidden job? In this world, your job was everything. Most people ended up as life classes, working ordinary jobs to serve the fighters. Only about 25% became combat classes. Hidden jobs, however, were incredibly rare, less than 1 in 100. They offered power and potential that far outstripped standard classes. If you had a hidden job, top universities would scout you before you even took the final exams. My current job was just a standard swordsman. It was decent, but Sword Immortal sounded like it was on a completely different level. "I'm sorry, ever-standing pill," I thought. "I really wanted you, but the Sword Immortal is calling my name." I mentally selected Mission 2. The first option faded away. Up on the stage, the school leaders were approaching her, and Chiohi was getting desperate because I hadn't responded. She grabbed the mic again. "Lin Yuan, It took so much courage to stand here. I did this because I love you. Can you give me an answer? The playground went silent. Every eye was fixed on me. I cleared my throat and spoke loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear. I'm sorry. I refuse. Women will only slow down the speed of my blade. Silence. Then, the crowd exploded. Lin Yuan is a legend. He actually turned her down. What a weird reason, though. Slow down his blade? He's just a swordsman. Why does he need to draw his sword that fast anyway? While the crowd gossiped, a notification flashed in my vision. Asterisk ding. Congratulations on completing the mission. Your job has been changed to the hidden class, Sword Immortal, asterisk. Suddenly, a strange power surged through my limbs. I felt a humming vibration in my chest, like a spiritual blade resonating with my soul. No one else could hear it, but the physical change was undeniable. I ignored the chaos and opened my new attribute panel. Name, Lin Yuan level, 14 job, Sword Immortal, unique hidden class, strength, 34 agility, 34 spirit, 22 stamina, 29 equipment, standard school uniform, defense +5. Skills, 1, Sword Heart, level 1, passive increases damage by 50% when using sword-type weapons. 2, Sword Kinesis, level 1, active changes combat style to telekinetic control. Can attack from a distance. Increases attack speed by 50% and damage by 20%. 3. Sky-Shattering Strike, level 1, active a rapid, powerful circular slash that can deflect incoming enemy skills. Cannot be used while Sword Kinesis is active. I stared at the screen, stunned. My stats hadn't changed. They were already high because of previous mission rewards, but these skills were insane. A level 10 player usually had average stats around 15. Mine were double that, which was why I was the top student in my class. But as a regular swordsman, I lacked the raw utility of the school's other elite hidden classes. Now, that was over. My old basic skills like sword mastery and heavy strike were gone, replaced by something far more lethal. I was no longer just a guy with a sword. I was the blade itself. My old skill, sword mastery, was gone. In its place was Sword Heart. At level 1, Sword Mastery only gave a 5% damage boost. But Sword Heart, it gave 50%. That was a tenfold difference. It proved just how much stronger a hidden class like Sword Immortal was compared to a basic swordsman. Then there was Sword Kinesis. This skill allowed me to control my blade telekinetically. It wasn't just flashy and cool. It boosted my attack speed by 50% and my damage by 20%. It was a massive jump in raw power. Finally, there was Sky-Shattering Strike. I couldn't use it while my sword was flying, but it was a powerful area of effect skill. It served as both an ultimate attack and a perfect defense, capable of knocking away incoming enemy spells. Overall, the Sword Immortal class had two main traits. It was incredibly strong, and it was incredibly cool. The class name was cool, the skills were cool, and I was sure the animations would be even cooler. Honestly, it fit my personality perfectly. I've always believed that looking good is half the battle. I was so busy celebrating my new power that I didn't notice Chiohee. After I rejected her, her pretty face was a mask of pure grievance. She hadn't expected me to say no. Her lips trembled, and her eyes filled with tears. Seeing her look so heartbroken, her group of fanboys started shouting, calling me heartless for embarrassing her in front of everyone. Just as the crowd was about to turn into a mob, the leadership on the stage snapped. A middle-aged man in heavy armor grabbed the microphone. "This is the 100-day oath ceremony," he roared. "What is this nonsense? Have you no shame?" The field went silent instantly. That was Cui Shan, the dean of students. He was famous for being strict and having zero tolerance for drama. With the school board sitting right there, he was clearly humiliated by our little scene. He stood up, glaring at us. "You too, my office." Now, he barked. He turned to another teacher. "Teacher Wang, continue the ceremony. Keep order." Cui Shan marched toward the office building. Every step he took made his heavy armor creak and groan, a sound that set my teeth on edge. He was furious. I felt a wave of frustration. Chiohee was the one who stopped me and started this. Yet I was being dragged into the line of fire. She was nothing but trouble. I had no choice but to follow. Inside the office, the lecture began. There are only 100 days left until the college entrance exams, Shan shouted. He had been yelling at us for 2 hours straight. This ceremony is meant to motivate people, to give them the drive for the final sprint. Instead, you two are out there distracting everyone. If the other students lose their focus because of your little soap opera, how are they supposed to level up? He sat behind his desk like a warlord. I let his words go in one ear and out the other, secretly focused on my new class. I couldn't help but let a small smirk tug at the corner of my mouth. Xiaohe, on the other hand, was sobbing quietly. Whether it was because of my rejection or the dean's yelling, she looked pitiful. Unfortunately for her, neither man in the room cared about her tears. The constant sobbing was starting to annoy me. When Shan paused to take a drink of water, I finally spoke up. Director Chui, this really doesn't have much to do with me, does it? I was just standing there. I didn't say a word. She confessed. I rejected her, and that was it. I don't think I should be punished for this long. Don't talk back. Shan snapped, cutting me off. You think you're innocent? You were part of the disruption. You're both getting punished together. I cursed him out in my head. If he wasn't a level 54 heavy knight, I might have said it out loud. Beside me, Xiaohe whispered, I'm sorry, Lin Yuan. I didn't think this would get you in trouble. She looked at me with those big, teary eyes. Maybe I can take your punishment for you. I stared at her. Was she serious? Her apology just made things worse. She was acting like a martyr, and it was driving me crazy. She had a pretty face, but she clearly didn't have a brain to match. Predictably, her offer to suffer for me only made Shan angrier. He let out a cold snort. Oh, so we're playing star-crossed lovers now, he sneered. You want to take his punishment? Fine. I'll give you both a real taste of reality. Both of you are going to the death trial. Let's see if a brush with death clears those romantic delusions out of your heads so you can actually study. The moment he said death trial, both our faces turned pale. The death trial was a man-made dungeon that the school had bought for a high price 6 years ago. It was designed for students to grind experience and practice combat. The benefit was that you didn't actually die. If your health hit 0, you were just forcibly teleported out. However, you still felt everything. You experienced the full agony of dying. Because of that, nobody wanted to go in there. It was pure torture. There were only 2 ways out of that dungeon: clear all 10 floors, or die. Clearing it was impossible. The 10th floor featured a level 25 bronze boss. The average high school senior was only level 15. Expecting a student to beat a boss 10 levels higher than them in a solo dungeon was a joke. In the 6 years the school had owned it, the best student ever had only reached the 8th floor. They hadn't even seen the boss. Going into the death trial meant you were guaranteed to experience the sensation of dying. For a student, that was a traumatic nightmare. Nobody in their right mind volunteered for that kind of self-inflicted pain. I thought about the logistics of it all. Why would anyone choose this place? Most students just went outside the city walls to practice at spots where the monsters averaged level 10. It was safer, easier, and much less painful. Over time, the death trial had been abandoned by the students, eventually becoming nothing more than a tool for the school to punish troublemakers. It worked, too. Most kids at first stayed in line just to avoid this place. I had never been inside myself, but I'd heard the stories. Students who were sent in here came out with massive psychological trauma. It usually took them a full week just to stop shaking. It was a brutal, unforgiving punishment. Suddenly, a familiar chime rang in my head. Ding! Asterisk new mission available. Please check immediately. Asterisk. Another one? The system was being incredibly active today. I kept my face neutral and pulled up the mission panel in my mind to scan the options. Asterisk current available missions asterisk. Asterisk 1. Accept the punishment gracefully. Reward. 1 weapon blind box. Special item. Contains a random grade weapon. That asterisk. Asterisk 2. Point at Dean Shan and ask if he's lost his mind. Tell him this has nothing to do with you and ask why he's punishing you for no reason, then walk away. Reward. 1 equipment blind box. Special item. Contains a random grade piece of equipment. Asterisk. Both rewards were tempting. I needed a weapon, but I also needed gear. However, I looked at Shan's face and realized that if I chose option 2, he'd probably swat me like a fly before I even finished the sentence. It wasn't that I was scared, I told myself. It was just that a sword immortal shouldn't be so vulgar. I accept mission 1, I whispered in my mind. The screen flickered, leaving only the first task active. On the outside, I remained calm and looked straight at Chui Shan. Dean Chui, I accept the punishment. I'll go to the death trial. My quick compliance caught him off guard. Chui Shan was the type of man who responded well to respect, but turned into a wall of fire if you pushed back. Seeing me so cooperative calmed him down instantly. He nodded, his voice losing its sharp edge. Fine. Both of you, follow me to the teleportation hall. He stood up, adding one last warning. Don't let there be a next time. If I catch you again, the punishment won't be this simple. He led the way out of the office. As I walked behind him, a notification popped up. The mission was complete. A small, ancient-looking wooden box appeared in my inventory. I didn't open it yet. With Chui Shan and Xiaohe right there, I decided to wait until I was inside the dungeon. I wanted to see just how lucky I really was. Xiaohe followed us, looking like he was walking to his execution. We arrived at the teleportation hall quickly. The room was massive, housing 4 major teleportation arrays and 1 single dungeon entrance. The arrays led to various leveling zones around Beijiang City, ranging from level 5 forests to level 20 haunted woods. Students usually paid points to use them, but we weren't going to the arrays. We stopped at the glowing archway of the man-made dungeon. A teacher stationed there stood up immediately when he saw the dean. Prepare the resources, Chui Shan ordered. Open 2 instances of the death trial. The teacher hurried to a side room and returned with a stack of materials. He placed them into the formation, and the entrance flared to life, swirling with a deep, azure light. Go on, Chui Shan said, his tone almost encouraging now. It's a punishment, but the school spends resources every time this opens. Treat it as a trial. Try to clear as many stages as you can for the experience. Don't waste the school's investment. I stepped forward, ready to get it over with, but a trembling voice stopped me. I don't want to go in. Xiaohe whimpered. I'm scared. Lin Yuan, can you help me? I turned around. He was looking at me with those big, watery eyes, looking perfectly pathetic. If any of his usual fanboys were here, they would have beaten their chests and offered to take his place in a heartbeat. They would have begged the dean to let them suffer instead. Fortunately for me, I wasn't a fanboy. I didn't feel a thing. Don't worry, I said, looking him in the eye. I can help you. Xiaohe's face lit up with hope. Really? Yeah, just close your eyes. He nodded eagerly and shut his eyes tight. While Chui Shan watched with a look of pure confusion, I stepped behind Xiaohe and placed my hand firmly on the small of his back. Off you go. With one hard shove, I launched him forward. Xiaohe let out a sharp yelp as he tumbled headfirst into the azure portal. He was gone in a flash. I dusted off my hands. Using my hands instead of my feet was the last bit of mercy I had as a sword immortal. Without a word, I stepped into the portal myself and vanished. Chui Shan stood there in the silence of the hall, staring at the empty space. He began to wonder if he had been wrong about the star-crossed lovers thing. The way I had just disposed of Chio, he suggested I was destined to be single for the rest of my life. The world blurred. A sharp tugging sensation pulled at my body, and then I was standing in the middle of the trial. Since it was man-made, the environment was basic. It was just a massive, square stone arena, 1,000 meters wide, surrounded by a gray, swirling void. The floor was made of cold, ash-colored tiles. The only features were 4 stone pillars, 3 meters high, standing in each corner. I had run low-level dungeons with the school before, so I knew the drill. I pulled up my status window. Dungeon, Death Trial. Objective, survive and defeat all monsters. Current monsters, 0. Next wave in. For minutes, 57 seconds. The system gave players 5 minutes to prep, drink potions, or cast buffs. It was the only humane part of this place. I reached into my inventory and pulled out the wooden box. Open the weapon blind box, I thought. The box began to rattle and glow. Cracks formed in the wood as a blinding light spilled out. Inside the radiance, I saw the silhouettes of countless weapons flickering past, swords, spears, bows, and staves. They flashed with different colors: white, blue, purple, gold, and red. In this world, those colors meant everything. They represented the gap between common trash and legendary artifacts. I held my breath, watching the colors spin, waiting to see what fate had in store for me. High-tier equipment was the ultimate game changer. Take my school uniform, for example. It was a basic white-grade item, providing a measly 5 points of defense. In this world, if you had high-grade gear, killing monsters above your level was as easy as drinking water. I watched the light from the weapon blind box intensify. It became so blinding that I had to shut my eyes. When the radiance finally died down, I looked at my hands. The box was gone. In its place was a long sword that looked ancient yet divine. The blade was a deep, translucent azure, covered in patterns that looked like ripples on water. It shimmered like stars in a dark sky, emitting a faint, blue mist that swirled around the steel. It was beautiful. There was only one problem. The glow coming off the sword was gold, not the seven-colored radiance of a mythical item. Still, I wasn't complaining. Gold-grade weapons were incredibly rare. I hadn't even heard of any teachers at number 1 high school owning one, and most of them were level 40 or 50. Even those who had reached their second or third class awakening usually only had a few purple-grade pieces. I swallowed hard and opened the item's attribute panel. Name, Azure. Grade, Gold. Level requirement, 15. Class requirement, Sword Immortal. Attributes, Attack plus 460, Strength plus 56, Agility plus 61, Spirit plus 79. Passive 1. Attacks have a 35% chance to slow enemies for 3 seconds. Passive 2. Lifesteal. Heals for 20% of damage dealt. Passive 3. Enhanced Ripple Slash. Releases a sword wave that travels up to 30 meters, dealing damage equal to the original skill. I stared at the screen, my mind going blank. My vocabulary failed me. The only word I could think of was insane. This weapon was custom-made for a Sword Immortal. The attack power was off the charts, and it boosted 3 major stats at once. But that final effect, turning a close-range skill into a long-range area of effect attack, changed everything. If a gold weapon was this broken, I couldn't even imagine what red, epic, or mythical gear looked like. With my hidden class and this sword, I wasn't just going to pass the college entrance exam. I was going to aim for the top score in the entire southern province. There was just one catch. Azure required level 15. I was only level 14. I was 1 level short of being able to use it. I sighed and reluctantly put the gold sword back into my inventory. I pulled out the only other weapon I had, the Wolf Fong Blade. It was a blue-grade weapon requiring level 10. It had 86 attack power and modest boosts to strength and agility. It also had a small chance to cause a bleeding effect. A few days ago, I had spent every cent of my savings to buy this blade just so I could survive the exams. At the time, I thought it was amazing. Now, looking at it after seeing Azure, it looked like absolute trash. Azure's stats were 5 times higher across the board. But I had no choice. I needed the Wolf Fong Blade to get through this trial and reach level 15. I gripped the hilt, waiting. The 5-minute timer hit 0. 3 summoning circles erupted on the stone floor 20 meters in front of me. I heard the sickening sound of grinding bone. 3 skeletons, about the size of grown men, stepped out of the light. They carried rusted scimitars and bone shields. Scraps of rotten meat hung from their ribs, and their hollow eye sockets locked onto me. Since our levels were close, their stats appeared in my vision. Monster, Bone Husk. Level, 10. Attributes, Strength 10, Agility 9, Spirit 4, Endurance 13. Skills, Bone Shield, Passive, Heavy Strike, Active. These were bottom-tier undead. I wasn't surprised to see them. The world had been slowly being consumed by the Dark Lands for years, a place of eternal night filled with undead. Many small countries had already fallen, their citizens turned into slaves of the darkness. Even our country, the Dragon Kingdom, lost countless warriors at the border every year. It was the reason combat classes were so highly valued. We were the only shield humanity had left. The Bone Husks were weak. Their stats were barely higher than an average level 10 student. Even back when I was just a regular swordsman, I wouldn't have feared them. I could have taken one down in 2 hits. The 3 skeletons hissed and charged toward me. They were slow. In my eyes, their movements were sluggish and predictable. The bone husks moved like turtles. Their steps were clumsy, their bodies full of openings. I didn't even have to try. I stepped forward, swinging the wolf fang blade in a casual arc. The blade connected with the lead skeleton. A crisp crack echoed through the arena. The monster shattered like a house of cards, collapsing into a heap of dry bones instantly. A one-hit kill. I blinked, a bit surprised. I knew these things wouldn't be a challenge, but seeing a level 10 monster explode from a single basic swing was a bit much. Before I could process it, the second bone husk reached me. I didn't think. I just slashed again. This time, the monster's passive skill triggered. It raised its bone shield to block my path. My blade slammed into the wood and bone, shearing through the shield and the skeleton behind it in one continuous motion. Another one-hit kill. Even with a 50% damage reduction from the shield, it didn't matter. I realized then that I didn't have a realistic grasp of my own power. To put it simply, I was terrifyingly strong. I took out the third skeleton with one final swing and took a second to look at my skill tree. I finally understood why I was hitting so hard. My Sword Immortal class had a passive called Sword Heart. It increased all damage dealt with sword-type weapons by 50%. Against these level 10 beasts, I was basically a god. I smiled to myself. A unique hidden class really lived up to the hype. But I knew this wasn't even my full potential. I wanted to use this death trial to see exactly what a Sword Immortal could do. The timer for the second wave was only 1 minute. I didn't get a break. 10 summoning circles glowed on the stone floor, and 10 more bone husks stepped out. They were still low quality, trying to win with numbers. It didn't bother me at all. This time, I didn't charge in. Getting close and hacking away was what a regular swordsman did. I was a Sword Immortal. I tossed the wolf fang blade into the air. Instead of falling, the sword defied gravity, hovering perfectly still in front of me. Go, I whispered. I pointed my finger at the crowd of skeletons. The blade spun in midair, locking onto its targets. With a sharp whistle, it tore through the air like a kinetic missile. Asterisk crack. 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 Asterisk. The blade punched through 3 skeletons in a row, shattering them like glass. In this flying sword mode, my damage increased by another 20%. Their defense was non-existent to me now. My attack speed was also up by 50%, making the sword feel more agile than my own hands. In the time it took me to swing twice manually, the flying sword could strike 3 times. It was incredibly smooth. Even though it was my first time using the sword kinesis technique, the blade moved exactly where I wanted it to. It danced through the remaining skeletons, leaving nothing but white afterimages. Every time a shadow passed a monster, it exploded. It didn't matter if they blocked. It didn't matter if they ran. I just stood there, hands at my sides, watching my weapon do the work. It was an intoxicating feeling. When the last of the second wave fell, I hooked my fingers toward me. The wolf fang blade trailed a faint white mist as it flew back, circling my body like it was alive. The third wave came even faster. 30 seconds later, 10 more circles lit up. I waited patiently, then pointed again. Go! The sword shot out, killing one skeleton before it had even fully materialized from the light. Outside in the teleportation hall, Principal Chui Shan hadn't left. He was staring at the monitor panel, the back end of the dungeon system. He couldn't see the actual fight, but he could see the data. He checked Xiuhe's progress first. A light screen showed a map of the dungeon with a green dot for the student and red dots for the monsters. Xiuhe's green dot was dim, meaning she was already injured. 3 red dots were gone, but 7 were chasing her across the map. Chui Shan shook his head. He knew it. A student who focused on romance instead of leveling was never going to make it. She was being chased like a rabbit in the second wave. She would likely fail by the third. She'd end up in some mediocre college, never becoming a true powerhouse. Disappointed, he closed her map and opened mine. Lin Yuan, he muttered. He was always a top-tier student. He remembered me as a regular swordsman with unusually high base stats. He expected me to at least reach the 6th wave. That was the real hurdle, 24 heavy bone husks. They were slow but hit like trucks. Most students got surrounded and crushed there. Even some of the elite hidden classes from previous years had been killed by a single strike in that wave. Unless you had massive crowd control, it was a nightmare. Chui Shan thought a mage might have a chance to blast through this wave with area of effect spells. But a swordsman like me? He was certain I would be countered by the heavy armor and crushed instantly. He opened my dungeon status panel, expecting the worst. Then he froze. His eyes widened in pure shock. The panel showed that I was already fighting the 6th wave. How was that possible? He was still struggling, barely surviving the 2nd wave. I had skipped ahead like a lightning bolt. If you factored in the spawn times between waves, I was clearing each floor in less than 2 minutes. Chui Shan rubbed his eyes, convinced the system was glitching. But there they were, 24 red dots representing the heavy bone husks. As he watched, the dots began to vanish. 1, 2, 5, 10. They were blinking out like a fuse burning through a firecracker. In a matter of seconds, every single red dot was gone. I had wiped out the entire wave in record time. What baffled Chui Shan the most was my own indicator. The green dot representing me hadn't moved an inch. In his mind, a swordsman had to dodge, weave, and parry. But I had cleared a room full of elite monsters without taking a single step. He couldn't wrap his head around it. Was I a melee fighter or something else entirely? Confused and suspicious, he shouted to the technician nearby. Is there a bug in the death trial? Check the system logs immediately. The teacher checked his monitor and shook his head. Everything is normal, Director. The dungeon is running perfectly. Why? Is there an issue with the display? Chui Shan opened his mouth to speak, but stopped himself. He just shook his head slowly. No, as long as it's working. He decided to keep watching. The 7th wave was the real turning point. That was where the difficulty spiked, introducing the iron-armored husks. They had legendary defense. He didn't believe for a second that I could one-shot them like the others. Inside the arena, I swung my blade and shattered the skull of the final heavy bone husk. A pillar of golden light erupted around me. The warmth flowed through my veins, washing away my fatigue. I had leveled up. I was now level 15. A grin spread across my face. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I reached into my inventory and pulled out the gold-grade longsword, Azure. I swapped out the crude wolf fang blade, and immediately, I felt the difference. The power radiating from the hilt was intoxicating. I had 30 seconds before the next wave. I pointed my fingers, testing my control. Azure rose into the air, hovering effortlessly. As it moved, it left behind a beautiful trail of blue mist, like a flowing river. Compared to my old sword, this was like trading a rusty shovel for a supercar. It wasn't just about looks, either. The connection felt smoother, and my projected damage output had just quadrupled. I felt like I could take on a level 20 boss and win in seconds. The countdown hit 0. 12 summoning circles lit up the floor. The number of enemies had dropped, which only meant one thing. These guys were much stronger. Massive figures, over 2 meters tall, stepped out of the light. Their every step rang out with the heavy thud of metal hitting stone. They were encased in thick black plate armor and carried massive twin-bladed axes. I scanned their stats. Iron-armored husk elites. Level 20. Their endurance was over 100 points. They had a passive skill called Iron Buddha that reduced all physical damage by 40%. On top of that, they were immune to slow effects and could stun anyone who got too close. Against a normal swordsman or archer, these things were walking tanks. Physical attacks would barely scratch their paint. Only a powerful mage could hope to break that defense. Luckily, I wasn't a normal physical fighter. I was a sword immortal. Azure, I whispered, pointing at the lead husk. Kill. The sword streaked forward, trailing blue mist. It struck the center of the monster's chest plate. There was a sharp clang, followed by the sound of metal tearing through bone. The blade passed straight through the husk's chest and exited out the back. The elite monster collapsed instantly. I whistled, impressed. If I were still using the wolf fang blade, it would have taken at least 4 or 5 hits to crack that armor. With Azure, it was like cutting through warm butter. Their weakness was their speed. Weighted down by that heavy armor, they moved like snails. They were nothing more than target practice. I sat back and manipulated Azure, weaving it through the air like a needle. In less than 2 minutes, the 12 tanks were reduced to piles of scrap metal and dust. The power of a sword immortal was truly terrifying. I knew there were only 3 waves left. I remembered hearing that the best score in the province's history was set a few years ago by a hidden class user who reached the 8th wave. If I cleared the whole thing, I wouldn't just pass. I'd shatter the record. I wondered if the school would give me a bonus for that. As I was thinking about the rewards, the 8th wave began. Suddenly, the arena was covered in hundreds of summoning circles. My heart skipped a beat. Before the monsters even fully materialized, the air was filled with a whistling sound. A rain of bone arrows arched through the sky, blotting out the light. They were targeting me before they even finished spawning. Are you kidding me? I muttered, bracing myself. These guys are camping the spawn. I cursed under my breath. I immediately manipulated Azure, calling the blade back to my hand. I didn't stay still like I had before. I sprinted backward, trying to get out of the effective range of that bone arrow barrage. Being a sword immortal was cool and powerful, but I didn't have any defensive skills. With Azure flying through the air, I was completely exposed. I had to retreat. Even though my agility was far higher than anyone else at my level, I wasn't fast enough. 2 arrows whistled through the air and bit into me, one in my thigh, one in my shoulder. I hissed in pain, my cool composure momentarily shattered. I gritted my teeth as Azure flew back into my palm. I gripped the hilt tight and looked up. The summoning circles faded, revealing over 100 monsters. They were copperbow husks, level 20. Their agility was high, and they had 2 nasty skills, arrow rain and rapid fire. They were only common grade monsters, but their strength lay in numbers. If I hadn't reacted quickly, I would have been turned into a human pincushion before I even saw their faces. The stinging pain in my wounds made my blood boil. I let out a low grunt and ripped the arrows out of my flesh. Blood spurted instantly, soaking my clothes. Across the arena, the husks were already drawing their bows again. A second volley was coming. Against a normal player, this many archers was a death sentence. But they weren't fighting a normal player. They were fighting a sword immortal with a legendary weapon in his hand. Twang! The sound of 100 bowstrings releasing echoed at once. The sky turned black with arrows. There was nowhere to run. I didn't even look at the sky. I held Azure with one hand and swung it in a wide, sweeping arc. The blade moved with blinding speed, tracing a perfect crescent moon in the air. A 5-meter radius around me became a forbidden zone. Anything that entered that circle would be shredded instantly. This was my second professional skill, Evening Sword Ripple. But I wasn't done. As the skill activated, Azure's blade shimmered with a watery blue light. A wave of sword chi erupted from the steel, radiating outward like a physical shockwave. This was a bonus effect from the sword itself, extending my attack range to 30 meters. The sword chi tore through the air. The incoming arrows were pulverized instantly, turning into dust like dry leaves in a storm. The wave didn't stop there. It slammed into the ranks of the copperbow husks. In less than 2 seconds, the entire army disintegrated. 100 monsters vanished, leaving nothing but piles of broken bone. The Death Trial, a dungeon that no student in the history of number 11 high school had ever cleared, had just been wiped clean by a single skill. As the dust settled, Azure began to glow. The sword had a passive ability that restored 20% of my health when I dealt damage. Cool, blue mist flowed from the blade into my body. I watched in awe as the holes in my shoulder and thigh closed up, leaving my skin smooth and my energy full. I looked at the field of debris and then back at my sword. I think I'm actually stronger when I'm holding the sword instead of flying it, I muttered to myself. Outside the dungeon, Chui Shan stumbled back 3 steps, a bead of cold sweat rolling down his forehead. A female teacher, a level 32 priest, rushed over to support him. She cast 2 cleanse spells on him, thinking he was having a heart attack. Director Chui, are you okay? She asked, worried. Should I take you to the infirmary? Chui Shan took a long time to find his breath. He waved her off weakly. I'm fine. Go back to work. I just need a moment. The teacher left, looking confused. He didn't look sick. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Chui Shan turned back to the monitor, his eyes fixed on the display. How is this possible? He whispered. He had seen the 100 red dots appear on the map. He knew exactly what they were. Years ago, a genius student with a hidden class had tried this trial. That student was level 20 and the top of his year, but the copperbow husks had killed him in 2 volleys. That defeat had crushed the boy's confidence so badly he failed to become the provincial top scholar. Since then, the school had stopped using the death trial for training. It was considered impossible. Yet, Lin Yuan hadn't just survived. He had deleted the entire wave in a heartbeat. Chuishan felt like he was losing his mind. He wanted to burst into the dungeon just to see how the kid was doing it. But before he could process the shock, the 9th wave began to spawn. This time, it wasn't just archers. 10 armored bone husks appeared in the front, acting as a meat shield, while 90 archers lined up behind them. The ultimate combination of defense and offense. I tightened my grip on Azure. It was time to break another record. The 9th wave formed a perfect balance of offense and defense. It didn't matter. I watched the screen in my mind as the red dots flickered. One moment they were there, and the next, they were gone. It was like a gale blowing through a room full of candles. Every single light vanished instantly. I had done it again. Another total wipe. Back in the observation room, Director Chuishan sat in stunned silence. I could tell he was starting to feel numb. He probably thought I was using some kind of cheat code. In his mind, it was impossible for a student to one-shot every single monster in the death trial, regardless of their type or formation. But I wasn't cheating. I was just a sword immortal. I stood in the center of the arena, looking at the empty space where the monsters had been. I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The sword immortal class was truly broken. My sword kinesis skill allowed me to kill from a distance with massive damage and speed. When I held the blade, I could unleash area of effect attacks that cleared the entire field while parrying any incoming projectiles. I had no weaknesses. There was only one wave left. I didn't know what was coming next, so I gripped Azure tight. If something tried to ambush me, this gold-gray blade would be the last thing they saw. Suddenly, a notification pinged in my vision. New mission available. Please check. My golden finger system was working overtime today. I opened the panel quickly before the final boss spawned. Current missions: 1. Clear the death trial. Reward: Skill blind box. Contains 1 rare skill book for your class. 2. Die in the death trial. Reward: a pair of glowing sneakers, common item. I stared at the second option for a long time. Glowing sneakers? That sounded incredibly cool. Every man loves things that light up. But I shook my head and pushed the temptation aside. A man's happiness might last a moment, but a rare skill book lasts a lifetime. I accepted the first mission. As soon as I made my choice, the countdown hit 0. A massive summoning circle erupted on the ground in front of me. It was 10 meters wide. Whatever was coming out was going to be much bigger than those armored husks. A gargantuan figure stepped out of the light, confirming my fears. It was a monster about 8 meters tall, looking like a silverback gorilla clad in heavy black iron armor. Thick black fur sprouted from the gaps in its plate, and its face was a nightmare of tusks and matted hair. Its left arm was long enough to reach the ground, while its right hand dragged a war hammer so large it could have crushed me like a grape. I felt a heavy pressure weighing down on my chest. I focused my eyes to read its stats, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. Was the school crazy? They wanted a weak and helpless high school senior to fight this thing? Black Armored Ape, Bronze Boss. Level, 25. Attributes, Undead/Dark. Strength, 125 Agility. 59 Spirit. 48 Endurance. 113 Skills. Iron Armor, Passive. Reduces damage taken by 20%. Rampage, Active. Charges forward with crowd control immunity, knocking back enemies. Follows up with a 500% damage hammer slam. Battle Cry, Active. Cleanses all negative status effects. In this world, bosses were ranked from Iron to Mythical. A bronze boss like this usually required a full 5-man team of high-level professionals just to stand a chance. Most high school seniors were only level 12. Even the teachers were only around level 30. This was like asking a delivery boy to go kill a dragon. It wasn't just a trial, it was a death sentence. The pressure was real, but I didn't back down. The thought of that rare skill book kept my feet planted. Besides, one-shotting weak mobs was starting to get boring. The ape didn't have any ranged attacks. It let out a deafening roar that shook the arena and started charging, dragging that massive hammer behind it. I did a quick mental calculation. Its agility was higher than mine. If I tried to outrun it in a straight line, I was dead. One hit from that hammer would turn me into a red mist. Sword kinesis, I shouted. I flicked my wrist, and azure flew from my hand, streaking through the air like a bolt of blue lightning. I sprinted backward, keeping as much distance as possible. I had to play this like an archer, kiting the beast and chipping away at its health. Azure looked like a toothpick compared to the ape's massive body. It seemed impossible for such a small blade to do real damage. But when the sword struck, the impact was thunderous. The ape stumbled, its heavy armor cracking like glass hit by a bullet. I could break its defense. Roaring in fury, the ape swung its left hand like it was swatting a fly, trying to knock Azure out of the air. But my control was too precise. The blade danced through the air, weaving around its limbs and leaving deep gashes in its flesh. Then, Azure's special effect kicked in. A cold blue light flared, and the ape's movements suddenly slowed down. Its speed dropped by 35%. It realized it couldn't catch the fly buzzing around it, so it turned its hateful eyes toward me. As the beast tried to charge me, its legs felt like lead. Its movement speed dropped visibly, slowing down until we were moving at roughly the same pace. The best part about sword kinesis was that I didn't have to stand still to use it. I could move, weave, and reposition while my blade did the work. I was kiting a boss, and it was surprisingly easy. 2 minutes passed. The black-armored ape was covered in deep gashes, its dark blood staining the stone floor, yet it hadn't even managed to touch a thread of my clothes. I planned to keep this rhythm up until it bled out, but the boss had other ideas. It stopped dead in its tracks, a low, guttural growl vibrating in its throat. Suddenly, a shimmering red aura erupted around its body. It looked like a suit of energy armor. The ape lowered its shoulder and lunged at me. It started slow, but it gained momentum with every step, rapidly closing the gap between us. It was a charge skill. I didn't dare take it head-on. I focused my mind, recalling Azure to my hand while sprinting to the side, trying to get out of its path. But then I realized something that made me want to curse out loud. The skill was called charge, but this monster was steering. It was actually turning to follow my movement. If you can turn, don't call it a charge. Call it a pursuit. I didn't have time to complain for long. The arena wasn't that big, and the ape's sheer mass was forcing me into a corner. Its turns were clumsy due to inertia, but I was running out of room to breathe. Thud! The red energy shield slammed into me. I felt the air leave my lungs as I was knocked backward, my chest heaving from the impact. Luckily, the charge itself didn't deal massive damage. It was designed for the knockback and the stun. I held my ground, but the ape had already stopped. It raised its massive hammer high, using the momentum of the charge to bring it crashing down. If that hit me, I was dead. One hammer strike at 500% damage would turn 10 versions of me into a pancake. The shadow of the hammer loomed over me, a literal death sentence. But in that split second, Azure flew back into my palm. The moment my fingers gripped the hilt, my skill, Moon-Calming Slash, lit up on my mental HUD. I swung. A brilliant, crescent-shaped beam of sword light exploded from the blade. Clang. The sound of metal hitting metal was deafening, making my ears ring. Moon-Calming Slash didn't just deal damage. It had the power to negate enemy attacks and skills. The massive hammer was actually deflected, forced upward by my strike. I didn't stop there. As the sword light faded, a secondary wave of sword chi rippled out, slicing clean through the ape's abdominal armor. A deep gash appeared, and dark, hot blood sprayed across the floor. The ape roared in pain, stumbling back 2 steps. I didn't waste the opening. I slipped past the beast, escaping the corner and regaining the center of the arena. I immediately released Azure again, sending it spinning through the air to tag the ape with another slow debuff. The ape swiped at the air in frustration, realizing I had slipped away like an eel. It let out a series of furious shrieks, and a red light burst from its body again. To my surprise, the slow effect I just applied vanished instantly. It was a battle cry skill, a cleanse that removed all debuffs. It was a smart move to prevent being kite forever, but there was one problem. My slow effect didn't come from a skill with a long cooldown. It came from my basic attacks with Azure. The moment it cleansed itself, I sent Azure back in for another strike. The slow debuff reappeared instantly. The ape looked like it was about to explode from pure rage, white steam huffing from its nostrils. It tried to chase me again, but we were back to square one. It couldn't catch me. It tried to charge one more time, but I was ready. I didn't even bother dodging. I took the hit, used Moon-calming slash to parry the follow-up hammer strike, and landed another heavy counterattack. The lifesteal from Azure kept my health bar topped off, making me feel invincible. Finally, after its third failed charge, I landed one last Moon-calming slash. The blow hit home, and the black-armored ape let out a final, pathetic whimper. Its armor shattered, and its massive body crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. I watched as a massive amount of experience flooded into me. A golden light swirled around my body. Level 16. The ape's body dissolved into light, leaving behind a glowing teleportation array. I had done it. I had soloed a level 25 bronze boss. I looked around for loot, but the ground was empty. I felt a pang of disappointment. Usually, bosses in the wild or in hidden realms dropped incredible gear. Since this was a man-made trial, I guess the school didn't want to hand out free purple-grade items. Then I remembered. The system task. I opened my quest panel and saw the completed notification. With a flick of my finger, I turned it in. A skill blind box appeared in my inventory. I opened it immediately. Icons for various skills flashed rapidly before my eyes. Every single one of them was related to swords, and every single one looked incredibly powerful. Finally, the light settled, and a purple skill book sat in my hand. I checked the stats and almost shouted for joy. It was exactly what I needed. Skill, Drunken Moonstep. Requirement, Sword Immortal, level 15. Asterisk effect, increases movement speed by 300% and creates afterimages. Grants a 99% chance to dodge all non-continuous area of effect attacks. Asterisk. It wasn't a high-damage nuke, but this utility was insane. With this, nobody would ever touch me again. I knew how rare a skill like Drunken Moonstep was. From what I remembered, Wind Mages had a skill called Wind Walk that was considered the gold standard for speed, but that only gave a 100% boost for 10 seconds. My new skill was 3 times faster, and it didn't have a duration limit. As long as my stamina held out, I could maintain that 300% speed boost forever. But the real game changer was the afterimage effect. It gave me a 99% chance to dodge any attack that wasn't a continuous area of effect spell. During that 6th wave of monsters, I wouldn't have even needed to move. I could have just stood there, laughing, as the rain of swords passed harmlessly through my flickering shadows. A 99% dodge rate was basically invincibility. If I actually managed to get hit with only a 1% chance, I'd have to be the unluckiest person alive. Sure, it wasn't perfect. If a fire mage dropped a sea of flames on me, I'd still take damage. But even so, this skill was god tier. If I'd had this against the black-armored ape, the fight would have been a joke. I could have danced around him without him ever touching a hair on my head. Even his final, desperate smash would have just hit air. I crushed the skill book, watching the purple light sink into my chest. My kit was finally complete. I had a long-range strike, a melee parry, an area of effect attack, and now, extreme speed and near invincibility. I felt unstoppable. I stepped into the teleportation array and felt the familiar, gut-wrenching tug of spatial travel. A moment later, I was back in the main hall. Old Kai was waiting for me. His expression was a mess, a mix of disbelief and confusion. He tried to maintain his usual stern, authoritative mask, but he couldn't hide the beads of sweat on his forehead or the paleness of his face. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "Director Kai," I said, breaking the silence. "I've finished the death trial. My punishment is over, right?" He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. He stroked his chin and nodded slowly. "Yes, since you've returned from the trial, the punishment is over." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "But Lin Yuan, did you actually clear the dungeon, or did you just survive the time limit?" "I cleared it," I said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The system teleported me back once the final boss was dead. Old Kai froze. "You're not lying to me? You know that no student has ever cleared the death trial, right? Tell me the truth. How did you get out?" I opened my mouth to tell him I just killed everything in my way, but the teleportation gate behind me rippled again. A small, slumped figure was spat out of the portal. It was Chiohi. She had been killed in the third wave and was only just now being forcibly ejected by the system. She looked like a wreck. Her face was ghostly white, and her legs were shaking so hard she could barely stand. She stumbled toward me, reaching out, clearly expecting me to catch her. I didn't want to get dragged into her drama again, especially not with the director watching. I took a sharp step back. Thud. Chiohi hit the floor hard. The lingering trauma of dying in the simulation, combined with the pain of the fall, was too much. She broke down, sobbing on the cold tiles. Old Kai frowned. The deaths in the trial are simulated. There's no reason to cry. You're a professional now. If you're this scared of a simulation, how will you ever face real monsters or the corruption of the Darklands? Chiohi tried to stand, but her legs were like jelly. The memory of being torn apart by the bone husks had broken her spirit. Director, I can't stand up, she sobbed. Those bone husks were horrifying. There were so many of them. I couldn't escape. I couldn't help myself. The bone husks. You mean the ones that die in one hit? She looked up at me, teary-eyed and confused. I shrugged. The only ones that were actually annoying were the bronze bow husks. If you aren't prepared for their volleys, they can be tricky to dodge. Bronze bow husks. Chiohi stammered. What are you talking about? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, right. Those don't show up until the 7th wave. You probably died during the 3rd, so it makes sense you wouldn't know. Chiohi looked like I'd just slapped her. Old Kai looked at me, then at her, and sighed. I think he realized then that his plan to use Chiohi as a temptation to test my focus had been a total waste of time. I wasn't distracted, I was just annoyed. Enough, Old Kai said, waving his hand. The punishment is over. Go home. I hope this trial served as a warning to spend the next 100 days focusing on the college entrance exams instead of other things. I nodded and turned to leave, but Old Kai called out one last time. Lin Yuan. Tomorrow, the seniors are heading to the wilderness for a leveling expedition. It's going to be different from the usual trips. Don't be late. He lowered his voice, his tone turning serious. The school has big ambitions this year. We want to produce a top-tier scholar for the northern province. My eyes lit up. He didn't have to spell it out. Even though he hadn't praised me directly for clearing the trial, he was giving me a heads up. This expedition was a special opportunity for the elite students. I understand, I said with a small smile. Thanks, Director. I walked out of the hall, leaving a sobbing Chiohi behind. Old Kai eventually lost his patience and called another teacher to drag her off to the infirmary. I didn't look back. I had a level 15 sword to wield and a province to conquer. Old Kai sent Chiohi to the infirmary to see the school doctor. He ordered the priest on duty to give her a few healing spells and some mental buffs to calm her down. I didn't stick around to watch. The next morning, I arrived at class on time, just like any other day. I walked to my desk and stopped. It was buried. A mountain of breakfast sets, sandwiches, soy milk, pastries covered the entire surface. Each one had a pink, heart-shaped card attached, covered in delicate, flowery handwriting. I stared at the pile, expressionless. I reached into the depths of my desk drawer and pulled out a thick stack of pink envelopes. Love letters. I didn't even open them. I scooped up the entire mountain of food and letters in one go. Hey, watch the goods. Go Sheng had been waiting nearby like a hungry vulture. He lunged forward and caught the pile before anything hit the floor. Don't worry about it, Brother Lin, he said, grinning ear to ear. The usual routine. Leave the disposal to me. He didn't waste a second. He ripped open a package and started shoving a sandwich into his mouth. Go Sheng was built like a bear, and I knew exactly why. Half his body mass was probably made of breakfast sets intended for me. I never touched the food. I didn't want to owe these girls anything, but I hated wasting food even more. Go Sheng's parents really knew what they were doing when they named him. His name literally meant dog's leftovers, and he lived up to it with pride. I reached back into the dark corners of my desk. My fingers hit something paper thin. I pulled out another stack of letters. My brow furrowed. What's going on? I muttered. There are way more than usual today. Go Sheng spoke through a mouthful of egg and ham. What? You don't know? Lin, you're famous. The school forums are exploding. Everyone from the freshmen to the seniors knows you rejected the campus goddess yesterday. I figured people would find out. I said, leaning back. But shouldn't they be backing off? Why are they sending more? Gosheng looked at me like I was the idiot. He wiped a bit of mayo from his lip and took on the air of a grand strategist. Think about it. You rejected Xiaohe. That proves you aren't into her type. And if you aren't into the goddess, then maybe you're into one of them. As long as you don't have a girlfriend, they all have a chance. Even if you get one, they'll just wait to be the next one. Or the other one. I stayed silent. The logic was exhausting. Gosheng took a long swig of milk and started on a second sandwich. Honestly, Lin, you should have just accepted her confession. If you were with Xiaohe, the letters would stop, and I'd get to see her face every day. Everyone wins. He smiled happily, clearly satisfied with his own twisted reasoning. I looked at him, my expression unreadable. Do you even hear yourself? Is that how a human speaks? You don't understand. Gosheng sighed dramatically. My love for Xiaohe is pure. As long as she's happy, I'm happy, even if she's happy with you. My entire worldview felt like it was being flipped upside down. Don't call me brother anymore. You're the boss. I could never reach your level of whatever this is. Gosheng missed the sarcasm entirely. He puffed out his chest. I know. It's a burden. You get the letters and the stress. I get the sweetness of watching love from afar. Go enjoy your sweetness somewhere else. I snapped, moving my desk a few inches away from him. You're making me nauseous. Gosheng scrambled after me, his face turning serious. Wait. I actually forgot to tell you something important. Something bad. Spit it out, I said, wanting him to shut up before he ruined my brain further. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. This is a problem. There are a lot of guys in school looking to crack your skull open. Remember when old Kai took you and Xiaohe away yesterday? Well, last night, she posted to her friend circle. Look, he handed me the phone. I looked at the screen and felt a shiver of pure cringe crawl up my spine. The post read, I finally found the courage to be brave once, only to have my heart shattered. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I don't deserve him. The photo was a shot from an infirmary bed. Get this garbage away from me, I hissed, shoving the phone back. My toes were literally curling in my shoes from the secondhand embarrassment. Gosheng shoved the screen back in my face. You missed the important part. Look at the comments. What? More sad girl poetry? More thirsty guys checking if she's okay? No. Gosheng pointed to a specific comment. Xiaohe has a lot of stalkers, but one guy has been chasing her for 2 years. You know him. Li Zai. I paused. The name rang a bell. Class 9's monitor? The hidden class user? That's the one, Gosheng nodded. He's in Shadow Archer. Top 10 in the entire senior year. A real contender for the top provincial score. He's obsessed with Xiaohe. I heard he's put 3 guys in the hospital for even talking to her. He uses his class skills to jump people in the wilderness. Gosheng pointed at the comment under the photo. I looked. The username was he going with her. The comment read, Lin Yuan, if you break her wings, I will destroy your heaven. I felt like my eyes were bleeding. I grabbed the phone and threw it across the room. Hey, my phone, Gosheng yelped, diving to catch it. He checked the screen for cracks, looking wounded. If you ever show me something that cringy again, I'll destroy your heaven, I growled through gritted teeth. God, those two deserve each other. I'm glad I don't have them on social media. I'd be blind by now. Gosheng didn't seem to care about the cringe. He looked at me with genuine concern. Lin, seriously, be careful. This is leveling weak. We're going into the wilderness. That guy is known for firing black arrows from the shadows. He's going to come for you. I waved him off. I hear you. If this had happened a few days ago, I might have been worried. Li Zai was strong, and as a standard combat class, I usually ranked around 30th in the school. He was definitely out of my league back then. But things were different now. He wasn't the only one with a hidden class anymore. And mine was legendary. I was a hidden class now. If Li Zai really wanted to come after me, I wasn't sure whose heaven was going to be destroyed, but I knew for a fact I could break his legs. Time passed quickly. My classmates filled the room, the noise level rising until the door swung open. Li Qing, our class teacher, walked in. She was a capable woman in her early 30s with short, sharp hair. She was strict but cared deeply for us, so she earned everyone's respect. Today, she wasn't in her usual professional clothes. She wore the tight-fitting leather armor of a ranger. It was a silent reminder. This was leveling week. We were going into the wilderness to kill monsters. She clapped her hands, the sound cutting through the chatter. Everyone is here? Good. Before we head to the teleportation hall, I have something to distribute. Class monitor, study rep, come here. She pulled several boxes from her inventory. When they opened them, I saw rows of small crystal balls, each about the size of a fist. We were all confused. For the past 2 years, leveling week always started with us just heading straight to the portal. We never got equipment before. Go Sheng leaned over, looking at me with a told-you-so expression. Old Kai had warned me yesterday that this week would be different. He was right. I took a crystal ball and checked its stats immediately. Asterisk Soul Collector. Alchemy item. Requirement. None. Effect. Collects the souls of slain beasts and converts them into points. The stronger the beast, the more points. Current points. 0. Asterisk. The description called it a minor work of an alchemist and noted that the souls themselves were actually useless. It felt like a glorified scoreboard. A small girl in the front row raised her hand. Teacher, what is this for? We've never used these before. It's to record your kills, Li Qing said. Her voice dropped an octave, turning serious. Listen, work hard this week. Do not forget to collect the soul of every beast you slay. And remember, the souls in these collectors can be transferred. Protect yourselves. Don't let someone else steal the points you worked for. She didn't wait for questions. She turned and hurried out of the room as if she were avoiding a deeper interrogation. The class buzzed with theories. Most figured the school alchemists just needed weird materials for their experiments. It seemed normal enough for those eccentric types. We stashed the collectors in our inventories and marched toward the teleportation hall. The place was packed with high school seniors from every combat class. Our schedule was simple: 1 week of theory in school, 1 week of bloody practice in the field. Back when we were freshmen, teachers guided us. Now, we were on our own. You could party up or go solo. I used to be a shield specialist, balanced, sturdy, and reliable. I started out partying with Go Sheng, but eventually, I started flying solo. Go Sheng had found a fixed team with some guys from another class lately, acting as their frontline tank. When it was our turn at the portal, I didn't hesitate. I selected the highest level map available, the Ghost Shadow Woods. It used to be a struggle for me to solo that place. But now, as a sword immortal, it would be a walk in the park. The familiar, gut-wrenching pull of teleportation hit me. When my vision cleared, I was standing in a forest choked with gray mist. Visibility was trash. Strange, willow-like trees swayed in the fog, their long branches looking like thin, twisting ghosts. I was in a safe zone established by the school. A few tents were pitched near the return portal, guarded by several teachers. As long as you stayed within their sight, you were safe. They provided water, food, and basic healing potions. I watched a few 5-man teams grab their supplies and disappear into the fog. Not many people chose this map. It was dangerous. I scanned the crowd and saw one other person heading out alone, a high-level hidden class student, though they vanished into the mist before I could see who it was. I grabbed my rations, packed my bag, and picked a direction. Within minutes, the safety of the camp was gone. The only sounds were the whistling wind, the crunch of dead leaves, and the eerie creaking of branches. I moved silently. My perception spread out, confirming I was alone. Suddenly, I lunged. I pulled Azure from my inventory and used my sword kinesis. The blade streaked forward like a bolt of blue lightning. Thwack! 15 meters ahead, a tree that had been slowly shifting its position was pinned to the ground. A horrific, ghostly shriek ripped through the air. A face distorted on the bark, hollow eyes glowing with a faint, sickly light, and a wooden maw hanging open to reveal jagged, splintered teeth. The scream didn't come from the mouth, but from the rustling canopy above. Bloodthirsty Shadow Willow. Level 20. Attribute: Wood/Dark. Skills: Life Drain, passive, Entangle, active, Bloodlust, active. These things were the nightmares of the Ghost Shadow Woods. They looked exactly like the surrounding trees until they moved. With high durability and a skill that could trap you while sucking your life dry, they were a death sentence for the unprepared. I pulled my sword back, the blue glow of the blade illuminating the swirling mist. My hunt had officially begun. Once these things entangle you, it's over. They use their bloodlust effect to hug a traveler tight and drain them dry like a human juice box. Most people at this level can't even damage the tree faster than it heals from the siphoning. But honestly, these beasts were kind of stupid. They had terrible agility and loved to wander around aimlessly. Seeing a tree slowly shuffling through the mist with its mouth open was a dead giveaway. As long as I stayed focused, it was easy to spot them. If you didn't let them grab you, killing them was just a matter of time. Of course, for me, it was even simpler. I sent Azure flying. The blue blade pierced a massive hole straight through the bloodthirsty shadow willow's trunk. In an instant, the tree shriveled up, turning dry and brittle before it stopped moving entirely. The ironclad bone husks I fought earlier had 3 times the defense of this thing, and even they couldn't stand a single hit from Azure. This tree didn't stand a chance. I walked over to the remains and pulled out my soul collector. As I got close, the willow's corpse crumbled into gray ash and flowed into the crystal ball. I checked the display. My points had already updated. The soul collector was a basic alchemy item. It didn't have any stat requirements, and its only job was to turn the souls of slain beasts into points. The stronger the beast, the higher the score. Right now, I was sitting at 20 points. Not a bad start. I tucked the crystal away and prepared to move deeper into the woods to find more prey. Suddenly, my system panel flickered. A new notification popped up. I opened it and saw 2 options. Task 1 required me to kill 200 bloodthirsty shadow willows. The reward was a purple grade title medal called Plant Killer. It gave 10 points to every attribute and a 10% damage boost against wood-type enemies. Since medals didn't take up equipment slots, those stats were basically free. It was like wearing an extra piece of level 15 blue gear. But 200 trees? That would take forever. These willows were scattered all over the map. I'd spend more time walking than fighting. My teacher, Chui Shan, told me not to slack off during this trial. I couldn't afford to waste days on a grind that would only put me in the middle of the class rankings. Task 2 was much more practical. Kill 10 bloodthirsty shadow willows. The rewards were a 1,000 gene potion and a monster-finding paper man. The potion gave a permanent 10-point boost to strength, and the paper man could lead me to nearby monsters of the same type. It had 100 uses. I didn't have to think twice. I accepted task 2. I pushed forward. Before long, I spotted another tree shuffling through the mist like an old man taking a slow stroll. I flicked my finger, and my sword streaked out, cutting the old man in half. Another 20 points. My task progress hit 1 out of 10. An hour later, I reached the deeper parts of the Ghost Shadow Woods. I finished off my 10th willow and turned in the task. A blood-red potion and a tiny paper figure appeared in my inventory. I downed the 1,000 gene potion immediately, feeling a surge of power as my strength increased. Then, I pulled out the paper man. This little guy was going to make my life a lot easier. Just as I was about to start the next hunt, the panel refreshed again. The new tasks were similar, but scaled up. Task 1. Kill 1,000 forest specters. Reward, Ghost Killer, title medal. Task 2. Kill 100 forest specters. Reward, Mind Focus Potion and another monster-finding paper man. 1,000 was an insane number, even if specters were more common. I stuck with the second option. I found a single forest specter, cut it down, and then activated the paper man. The little scrap of paper took flight, darting through the branches. I followed it closely, letting it lead me straight to the next target. 2 days passed in a blur of steel and shadows. My progress was incredible. I completed 5 rounds of tasks and hit level 17. I had hunted willows, specters, ghost fire foxes, and rotting woodcutters. Each task rewarded me with permanent stat potions and more tracking tools. Because of those paper men, I didn't waste a single second searching. I was either killing or moving towards something to kill. By the time I reached the 5th task, things got serious. I had to hunt down 100 drowned floating corpses. These were level 30 elite grade beasts. The reward changed, too. It wasn't a potion anymore. It was a weapon blind box. This was a chain quest, and the real prizes were finally starting to drop. It turned out the path I chose was a chain quest. One task led directly into the next, and I could tell a massive surprise was waiting for me at the end of the line. I felt a wave of relief that I'd picked the tasks with smaller initial rewards. If I'd gone for the Ghost Killer title, I probably would have ended up with a single medal and nothing else to show for it. My final target was the Drowned Floating Corpse, a level 30 elite monster. They sounded intimidating, but their actual strength was underwhelming. With my Azure Sword and my Sword Kinesis technique, it usually took me 2 swings to finish one off. If I aimed perfectly and hit a vital spot, I could even drop them in a single strike. The task didn't give me any trouble at all. I cleared it quickly and finally claimed my prize, a second weapon blind box. The quest panel went silent after that. No more tasks popped up. I took a moment to check my soul collector. Each kill had been racking up points. A level 25 Spectre was worth 25 points, and those level 30 Woodcutters were worth 30. But the Drowned Floating Corpses, being elite monsters, gave double points based on their level. That was 60 points per kill. Between the quest targets and the monsters I'd cut down along the way, my total score had skyrocketed to over 15,600 points. Even if I wasn't in first place, I had to be in the top 3 for the entire province. I stowed the collector and pulled out the blind box. My last one gave me the Azure Sword, a legendary gold-grade weapon. I wondered if my luck would hold. I tapped the box, and it shattered into fragments of light. Icons of different gear flashed before my eyes, spinning faster and faster until they blurred into a golden glow. When the light faded, the box was gone. In its place was a white robe embroidered with gold patterns. My eyes widened. It wasn't just the golden shimmer that proved it was a rare gold-grade item. It was the design. This thing looked incredible. It had a classic, ancient style, crafted from a material so light it seemed to drift even without a breeze. Golden dragon patterns were stitched along the sleeves, and jade pendants hung from the shoulders. A flying crane was inked across the waist with perfect precision. Then I checked the stats, and my jaw dropped. It was called the Gold Jade Vestment. It required level 15 and the Sword Immortal class. It provided 380 defense, 34 strength, 108 agility, and 98 spirit. But the additional effects were the real game changers. While using Sword Kinesis, my damage and attack speed would increase by 20%. Out of combat, my movement speed increased by 50%. Most importantly, it leveled up my Distant Moonstep skill. At level 2, my movement speed during the skill jumped from 300% to 400%. It also unlocked a new active ability called Sword Trek. While my afterimages were active, I could blink forward up to 20 meters, dealing 300% damage to anything in my path. I could do this 3 times in a row, and on the 4th activation, I'd instantly snap back to my original starting position. I felt unstoppable. This vestment was just as powerful as my Azure Sword. Even though it was cloth armor, its defense rivaled level 20 purple grade plate mail. With Sword Trek, I could dive into a crowd of enemies, take out their leader, and vanish back to safety before they even realized I was there. It was the ultimate hit-and-run tool. I didn't hesitate. I swapped out my school uniform for the Gold Jade Vestment. Instantly, I looked like a character out of a legend. Most gear in this world was bulky or strange, but this was pure elegance. My charisma was already high, but with this on, I knew I'd cause a riot if I walked back onto campus. Being this handsome was going to be a problem, but it was a problem I'd have to live with. With my power surging, I decided it was time to head back to the base camp. My supplies were nearly gone. I'd only brought 2 days' worth of food and water, which was the limit for students. The school enforced this rule to make sure everyone checked in every 48 hours. If someone didn't return, they were marked as missing, and search parties were sent out. It was a safety net that saved lives, even if it was a bit of a hassle. Besides, I hadn't slept in 2 days. I needed a safe place to crash for a few hours. With the 50% speed boost from my new robes, the return trip was a breeze. I felt like the wind itself was carrying me. The journey that took me 2 days of fighting to complete only took half a day to backtrack. As the fog thinned, the silhouette of the camp appeared. I saw a few students from other classes heading out, laughing and talking. They looked well-rested and ready to grind. As we crossed paths, their conversations died down. Every single one of them stopped and stared at me. They couldn't take their eyes off me. A young girl in priest gear at the back of the group looked completely dazed, her jaw practically hitting the floor. I couldn't blame her. I was already naturally handsome, but with the gold jade vestment draped over me, I looked like an immortal who had just stepped out of a painting. The only reason she didn't rush over to ask for my number was probably because she was too shy to move. We passed each other without a word. Once I was a few paces away, the silence behind me broke. One of the guys cleared his throat, and they went back to their gossip. "That guy back at the camp is in a bad way," one of them said, his voice fading as they walked. "What did he do to piss off Li Zai? Getting hung up and beaten like that in front of everyone. It's brutal." "Who knows?" another replied. "Li Zai is a jerk. Just because he's got a hidden class and acts like the school boss, he thinks he can do whatever he wants. But hanging a classmate up for public display? That's low. We're all from the same high school. How is that guy supposed to show his face again? I'd honestly drop out if that were me," a third voice added. "But that's the world we live in. The strong eat the weak. Li Zai is powerful, so he gets away with it. Let's just focus on leveling up so we don't end up like that." I usually didn't care about school drama, but the name Li Zai caught my attention. Goshing had mentioned him a few days ago. It sounded like something ugly was happening at the base camp. When I arrived, I saw a massive crowd gathered in a corner. Even the teachers were standing nearby, whispering and pointing. None of them moved to stop it. School rules were strict about fighting on campus, but out here in the wild, anything went as long as no one died. Ambushes, gear theft, and bullying were considered lessons to prepare us for the real world. The teachers acted like spectators at a show, watching to see which students were wolves and which were rabbits. I wasn't interested in the spectacle until I caught a glimpse of the person hanging from the rope. I froze. My blood turned to ice, then immediately began to boil. Through the thin mist, I saw a man covered in bruises, his heavy armor dented and bloodied. Even with the swelling, I recognized that frame instantly. It was Go Sheng. My only real friend was being treated like a piece of meat for the crowd's amusement. I didn't say a word. I just moved. I pushed through the crowd with my high-strength stat, literally shoving people out of my way. Some people started to curse at me for pushing, but as soon as they saw my face and my gear, they shut their mouths. I reached the front and saw a group of 4 students standing near Go Sheng, laughing and chatting. I recognized them. They were the teammates Go Sheng had joined up with 2 months ago. Seeing them standing there laughing while their teammate hung by his wrists told me everything I needed to know. They weren't his friends. They were the ones who had betrayed him. Standing slightly apart from them were 2 others. One was Chiohi. She looked panicked and conflicted. Beside her stood a tall, thin guy in black leather armor. He had a smug, self-satisfied grin on his face as he looked at Chiohi with an expression of fake devotion. Chiohi saw me first. Her face went pale. Lin Yuan, the guy in black armor, followed her gaze. Our eyes met. The 4 teammates stopped laughing and stepped behind him, forming a wall. It was obvious now. This wasn't about Go Sheng. This was a trap for me. That meant the guy in black had to be Li Zai? What happened here? I asked, my voice cold enough to cut bone. I looked directly at Chiohi. She looked like she was about to cry, acting as if she were the victim. "I'm sorry, Lin Yuan. I didn't want this to happen. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't." Li Zai's grin softened into a look of exaggerated pity. He reached out and stroked Chiohi's hair. "My little princess, don't cry. Your tears are pearls. I will protect them for you." I felt a surge of pure disgust. This guy was a total loser. I didn't want to hear another word out of his mouth. I was afraid if he spoke again, I'd lose control and hack him to pieces right there. I ignored them and stepped toward Go Sheng. My azure sword flashed in my hand for a split second. A single streak of blue light severed the rope. Go Sheng hit the ground with a heavy thud. The impact woke him up. He groaned, coughing as he tried to catch his breath. Li Zai's 4 lackeys moved to block me, but Li Zai held up a hand. "Let him be," Li Zai said, his eyes fixed on me. "Lin Yuan is the one I wanted anyway." He turned back to Chiohi with that nauseating look. "For you, Xiaohe, I would kill 10,000 men. But I want you to see that I am still a gentleman at heart." I felt like I was going to throw up. I knelt down next to Go Sheng, grabbed him by the collar of his heavy armor, and dragged him over so he could lean against a tree. "Go Sheng, you okay?" I asked, slapping his face lightly to keep him conscious. He swatted my hand away weakly. "Lin, brother, if you keep hitting me, I won't be okay. Don't worry. I'm a shield warrior. I'm thick-skinned. I just need a minute." Those bastards. He squinted his swollen eyes at me and suddenly gasped. Lin, brother? Why are you so shiny? Where did you get that gear? Did you rob a museum? Forget the gear, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Tell me how you ended up hanging from a tree. Go Sheng sighed, glancing bitterly at his 4 former teammates. I walked right into it. One of those 4 idiots is Li Zai's cousin. Li Zai couldn't find you, and they knew we were close. I didn't see it coming. Those guys are all Li Zai's lackeys, Go Sheng spat, coughing up a glob of bloody phlegm. Suddenly, his eyes widened as if he'd just remembered something important. Wait, Lin Yuan. They're after you. You need to get out of here. Take the portal back to school. The teachers won't interfere with student fights inside the camp, but you'll be safe back there. I didn't move. Li Zai, hearing Go Sheng's suggestion, didn't hesitate. He reached behind his back and drew his weapon. It was a massive black recurve bow that hummed with a sinister energy. A faint, dark purple glow pulsed along its frame. My eyes narrowed. A purple-grade weapon. That was high-tier gear, the kind of loot you only got from killing bronze-level bosses. Most students felt like kings if they had a decent blue-grade item. A purple weapon was almost unheard of. In the entire Northern Frontier trial, you probably wouldn't find 20 students with gear that good. Li Zai was already a hidden class user with a high level. With that bow in his hands, he was a walking nightmare for any normal student. He held the black bow with a mock solemnity, looking like a tragic hero in a bad play. Lin Yuan, he declared, his voice dripping with melodrama. I told you, if you break my goddess's wings, I will destroy your heaven. You made the woman I love cry. That is a price you cannot afford to pay. I stared at him, feeling a wave of second-hand embarrassment. Could you please stop talking? I muttered. It felt like I was being hit by a magical cringe attack. I looked down at Go Sheng. Just stay here. Let me go tear his mouth off first. Then I'll get you some healing potions from the teachers. Go Sheng panicked. Lin, brother, are you crazy? He's a hidden class. He has purple gear. You can't take him. Stop talking, I repeated firmly. Just lie down. The tension between me and Li Zai was thick enough to cut. The crowd of students nearby scrambled backward, clearing a wide circle so they wouldn't get caught in the crossfire. But even as they ran, their gossip was louder than their footsteps. What's the drama? Someone asked, leaning in. Man, where have you been? Did you miss the assembly? Another replied. Yesterday, the school beauty confessed to the school hunk. It was a disaster. Both of them got punished by the dean. Now, the beauty's biggest simper is here to get revenge on the hunk, and he beat up that piece of dung lying on the ground just for being near him. Oh, I see it now, the first guy whispered. The hunk and the beauty are obvious. So the simper is the guy with the bow, and the piece of dung is the guy in the heavy armor? Li Zai ignored them. He pulled a steel-tipped arrow from his quiver and notched it. You made my princess cry 6 times, he hissed. So I will put 6 arrows in you. The pain you're about to feel is nothing compared to the heartbreak I felt watching her tears. God, I muttered, starting to walk toward him. The pain of listening to you is worse than anything an arrow could do. My pace was steady. Not too fast, not too slow. Li Zai's 4 lackeys moved to intercept me, but he raised a hand, a smug smile on his face. Stay back. This is between us. A mere swordsman can't even get close to me. He pulled the string taut. A swirl of black mist gathered around the arrowhead, the air around it shimmering and distorting from the sheer intensity. Shadow Arrow. It was an active skill that infused the projectile with dark energy, dealing 200% damage while shredding 30% of the target's defense and slowing them down. As a shadow archer, a hidden class, Li Zai didn't just shoot. He stacked debuffs. He released the string. The arrow screamed through the air, trailing a ghostly black fog as it aimed straight for my thigh. I didn't dodge. I didn't even break my stride. The crowd gasped. To them, I looked like a fool. A melee fighter against an archer should be closing the gap at top speed or using defensive skills. I was just wandering forward like I was out for a stroll. I was a sitting duck. Everyone expected the arrow to shatter my leg and drop me to my knees. Then, my body blurred. As I stepped forward, I left behind a trail of afterimages. The arrow passed right through the center of my chest, or where my chest had been a millisecond before. It hit nothing but air and slammed into the ground behind me with a sickening thud, carving out a crater the size of a wash basin. The crowd went silent. By the time they looked back at me, the afterimages were gone. I was still walking, my pace unchanged, as if the arrow had never existed. Lizai gasped, his face paling. He didn't believe it. He snatched another arrow, notched it, and fired again, this time aiming for my stomach. The same thing happened. I moved like a ghost. My body flickered, an afterimage absorbed the dark energy, and the arrow whistled past me harmlessly. The onlookers were losing their minds. Most of them knew me as a mediocre swordsman. They couldn't wrap their heads around how I was casually walking through the attacks of a top-tier hidden class user. I was halfway to him now. Cold sweat broke out on Li Zai's forehead. He tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking slightly. He reached back and grabbed a special arrow. This time, he used a different skill. As the arrow left the bow, it split in midair. One real arrow became 5, fanning out to cover every possible angle of escape. Shadow split arrow. It was a localized area of effect attack. Each arrow dealt 40% damage and stacked defense and movement speed penalties. It was his sure hit move. No matter how I flickered or blurred, the spread was too wide to dodge. He thought he had me. I didn't bother changing my strategy. I kept walking. My body blurred into a series of hollow afterimages, flickering like a glitch in reality. Asterisk thud, 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 asterisk. 5 rhythmic impacts echoed as the arrows slammed into the dirt behind me. They had power, sure, but power means nothing if you can't hit your target. The Chinibyu energy drained out of Li Zai instantly. His eyes widened, his jaw dropped, and he froze mid-motion. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. I looked at his stunned face and thought about how unlucky this guy was. He had fired 7 arrows in a row, and every single one had been dodged by my moon-gazing step. A 99% dodge rate was truly broken. Even if one had managed to clip me, it wouldn't have mattered. I was wearing my gold-grade gold feather cloak. My defense was already higher than a level 20 plate armor warrior. I could take a hit. Besides, one strike with my azure sword would trigger its healing effect and patch me right up. But I didn't need to play defensively anymore. I had already strolled right up to his face. When a long-range archer lets a swordsman get this close, the outcome is usually decided. Li Zai snapped out of his shock and realized the danger. He slammed his foot onto the ground, and a layer of dark shadows swirled around him, wrapping his body in a tight cocoon. In a flash, the shadows vanished. He reappeared 20 meters away in an open clearing. It was a blink skill, similar to a mage's teleport, designed to create distance. Li Zai knew this move had a 10-second cooldown. He had 10 seconds to land a hit, apply a movement speed debuff, and start kiting me again. I wasn't going to give him those 10 seconds. As he raised his bow to try again, I flipped my wrist. A long sword shimmering with golden light appeared in my hand. The blade was surrounded by a swirling mist of water vapor. With my flowing robes and the ancient, transcendent aura of the sword immortal class, I looked like a being from a different realm. The crowd went dead silent. They weren't just shocked by my appearance. They were staring at the golden glow of the weapon. Gold grade. That was gear that only dropped from gold-level bosses at an incredibly low rate. Most students were lucky to have a single purple item. Even high-level experts over level 30 rarely saw gold gear. But I wasn't done. The white and gold robes I was wearing suddenly began to pulse with the same golden radiance. The crowd looked like they were having a collective stroke. A gold weapon and gold armor? At my level? It felt like a cheat code. I didn't show off the glow for fun. I had just activated the skill attached to my cloak, Sword Step. Since I was already holding Azure, the conditions were met. I triggered the skill without a moment's hesitation. My body turned into a streak of golden light. I lunged forward, leaving a trail of water vapor and a brilliant arc of light in my wake. It looked like a beautiful aurora, but it was filled with pure killing intent. The first 3 dashes of Sword Step dealt 300% damage to anyone in the path. With Azure's base stats, that was enough to one-shot a level 25 tank. I didn't aim for his heart. The camp had rules. We could fight and we could rob each other, but killing was strictly forbidden. The teachers would intervene if things got lethal. Instead, my blade grazed his skin, leaving a thin red line, and sliced directly through his dark bow. His expensive purple-grade weapon shattered instantly. Its durability hit 0, and it turned into scrap metal in his hands. The camp erupted. Holy crap, did you see that? He just closed 20 meters in a blink. He snapped a purple weapon like it was a toothpick. If that sword had moved 3 inches to the left, Li Zai would be dead. The girls in the crowd were losing their minds, calling me their god, while the guys were spiraling into pure envy. They were shouting about my gear, asking if I'd sell it, or if I'd just give it to them because we were classmates. I ignored them. I looked back at where I had started the dash. A golden afterimage of myself was still standing there, frozen in a sword-starting stance. It looked like a masterpiece painted onto the air. Slap. The sharp sound of a hand hitting a face cut through the noise. I had stepped up to Li Zai and sent him spinning to the ground with a backhand. He was a glass cannon archer. He didn't have the physical stats to tank a hit from me. He hit the dirt, mouth bleeding, his cool persona completely gone. I felt a wave of relief. It was like finally plugging a leaky sewage pipe. I didn't have to listen to his cringy dialogue anymore. I thought you were a sword immortal, I muttered, looking down at him. Sword immortals kill with their blades. I'm just using my hands for this part. I started kicking him. Talk more trash, I said, landing a blow to his ribs. Go on, say something else cool. I kept at it until I heard his bones start to creak, right on the verge of snapping. That finally woke up his 4 teammates. Hey, what are you doing? One of the archers screamed. Stop standing there. Help my cousin. They snapped out of their daze and rushed toward me. I turned my head and gave them a single, cold look. All 4 of them froze mid-step, their bodies stiffening with fear. If I could crush Li Zai this easily, they knew they didn't stand a chance. They didn't move, but I wasn't finished. I triggered the second dash of sword step. Another golden blur streaked through the air. In the blink of an eye, I passed right through the middle of the group. Azure flashed. For cries of pain rang out at once as they all collapsed to the ground. I looked down at the 4 of them. Each one had a matching gash across their chest. My control was precise. I had dealt enough damage to heavy crit them, but not enough to take their lives. I flicked my wrist, shaking the blood droplets off the tip of Azure, and let out a cold snort. Old Go practiced with you guys for so long, I said, my voice flat. There had to be some friendship there. But you? You sold him out the second things got tough. You're worse than trash. Who's ever going to want to party with you after this? They huddled on the ground, clutching their wounds and groaning. None of them dared to look me in the eye. While I was busy lecturing his lackeys, Li Zai saw an opening. He scrambled to his feet, eyes darting toward the teleportation gate. He was trying to make a run for it. He wasn't fast enough. I triggered the third dash of sword step. A golden afterimage blurred across the arena, and I manifested directly behind him. I didn't use the blade this time. I planted a heavy kick right into the small of his back. He went flying, face planting into the dirt like a dog chasing a bone. Li Zai let out a muffled grunt and slammed his palm against the ground. Shadows began to swirl around his body. It was the startup animation for Shadow Shift, a high-tier displacement skill. I just smiled contemptuously. Since I had used the 4th stage of my skill, the golden afterimages across the field vanished, and I was pulled back to my original starting position. The crowd gasped. They realized my dash wasn't infinite. I could strike 3 times, but the 4th move always returned me to where I started. To them, it looked like Li Zai was finally going to escape. After the show I'd put on, most people thought Li Zai had learned his lesson. Even if he escaped, I had already reclaimed my honor. But I wasn't done with him. Not by a long shot. You think 10 meters is enough distance? I whispered. I was a sword immortal. And sword immortals don't need to be close to kill. Sword kinesis, rise. I tossed Azure into the air. Instead of falling, the blade hovered, humming with a low, vibrant energy. The crowd went dead silent. A floating sword? It defied every law of physics they knew. Li Zai's body flickered and vanished, reappearing 10 meters away in a cloud of mist. He thought he was safe. I didn't even turn my head. I just pointed a finger toward his new location. Azure streaked through the air, leaving a trail of brilliant blue light behind it. It moved faster than the eye could follow. Before Li Zai could even steady his feet from the teleport, the blade reached him. Thwack! The sword pierced through his shoulder, pinning him directly to a thick tree trunk. He let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the entire camp. He hung there, dangling off the ground, completely immobilized. The entire fight, excluding the part where I walked up to him, had lasted barely a minute. It wasn't a duel, it was a one-sided slaughter. Lizai was supposed to be the school tyrant, and I was just the school pretty boy. Now, the tyrant was pinned to a tree like a specimen in a lab. The silence lasted for 3 seconds before the crowd exploded. "What kind of power is that?" someone yelled. "He's one-shotting everyone." "I feel like he's holding back," another student added. "If this were a real death match, Lizai would be a corpse by now." "Forget holding back," a third chimed in. "Look at the sword. It's flying. Since when do swordsmen have ranged homing attacks? My sword won't even stay balanced on my finger." I ignored the chaos. With a mental command, Azure slid out of Lizai's shoulder. It curved gracefully through the air, acting as if it had a soul of its own, and vanished back into my inventory. I used moon-watching steps, my movement speed hitting 400%, and blurred over to Lizai. I ripped him off the tree and tossed him into a pile with his 4 teammates. "Don't just sit there and die," I said, my voice icy. "Drink your healing potions." There were teachers watching the camp, and I didn't feel like catching a murder charge today. Lizai was shaking. He fumbled with his inventory and pulled out a bottle of high-grade red liquid. He downed it in one gulp. A faint red mist began to swirl around him, knitting his deep wounds back together. The others followed suit, chugging low-grade potions and waiting for the pain to dull. I stood over them, hands behind my back. My aura was sharp, oppressive. Just looking at me made Lizai gulp in fear. "You came after me because of Chio-hee," I said. "You beat up my friend. You tried to ruin my future." They all shivered. "So," I continued, "how are we going to settle this?" Lizai gritted his teeth, his eyes welling up with that weird, dramatic intensity again. "I was willing to be brave for love, to let the princess see her knight die standing. Speak like a human being," I warned. Azure hummed in my inventory, ready to fly out and turn him into a pincushion. Lizai instantly crumbled. "Don't hit me. Don't hit me. I'm sorry. I apologize. If you'd been normal from the start, I wouldn't have had to stab you," I muttered. "Apologies are cheap. I want something with actual sincerity." What do you want?" "Everything in your bags," I said. "Empty them. Now." Their faces turned pale, but they didn't dare argue. One by one, they began dumping their inventories onto the grass. 5 piles of loot grew in front of me, equipment, potions, and materials they'd gathered over the last 2 days of grinding. I sifted through the piles. Most of it was white or blue-grade junk. If there had been a single purple-grade item, I would have taken it, but there was nothing special. I grabbed Lizai's remaining high-grade potions and signaled to Old Go. "Pick whatever gear you can use," I told him. The rest of the stuff was worth maybe a few $1,000s, but I wasn't a scavenger. I wasn't going to carry their trash. However, there was one thing I did want. I reached out and took their soul collectors. One by one, I transferred their points to my own device. Individually, they weren't much, but together, it was about 6,000 points. I checked my total. 22,000. At this rate, the #1 spot in the province was already mine. I was ready to let Lizai go after taking everything he had. But before I could walk away, my eyes landed on Chio-hee. She had been standing there silently the entire time, trying to blend into the background. When she realized I was looking at her, her large eyes filled with panic. She knew she couldn't play the invisible witness anymore. "Lin Yuan, let me explain," she stammered. "The past 2 days, Lizai kept messaging me. He asked about us, and I was just venting a little. I told him everything, but I never imagined he'd do something like this. I didn't want him to hit your friend or come looking for you." She took a shaky breath, her voice getting smaller as I stepped closer. "I really tried to stop him. I told him to go back. You saw us earlier, right? I didn't want a conflict, but I couldn't hold him back." I looked at her with total indifference. There was no emotion in my eyes, nothing like the way Lizai looked at her. To me, she wasn't some fragile girl to be protected. She was just another person. Her explanation was pathetic. "So you're saying this was all Lizai's idea?" I asked, my voice dry. "You're just a saint who got caught in the middle and had nothing to do with the trouble?" "Yes, that's how it was," she whispered, her confidence failing. I didn't bother tearing off her White Lotus mask. I just held out my hand. Give me your soul collector. You probably don't have any gear worth taking, so your points will have to do. Chiohi froze. She looked at me in disbelief. You're even going to rob my points? But I'm a girl. I nodded slowly. You're right. Ladies first. I should have robbed you before the guys. I gestured again, more firmly this time. I didn't see her as a woman. I saw her as someone who belonged in Li Zai's camp. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't dare refuse. She handed over her device. When I checked the balance, I was surprised. She had 4,000 points. Li Zai must have been a dedicated lapdog, carrying her through levels and handing her the lion's share of the spoils. I took the points, satisfied with the unexpected bonus, and told them all to get lost. As they scrambled away, the crowd of onlookers began to disperse. Old Go, who had finished drinking his healing potion, wobbled over to me. Brother Lin, he sighed, looking impressed. You're incredible. You didn't even spare my goddess. Do handsome guys really not care about women at all? I rolled my eyes. I was a gentleman for not hitting her. She's the type to act innocent while stirring up trouble everywhere she goes. And you still treat her like a goddess? Old Go fell into a deep silence. For a moment, I thought he'd finally seen the light. Then he spoke. I think she probably had her reasons for doing it. She must be suffering inside. He was a lost cause. I didn't even want to talk to him anymore. But Old Go wasn't done. He looked genuinely pained. Wait, what are points even for? If Chiohi's score is too low, it'll ruin her college entrance exam. Even if it doesn't, it'll affect the resources the school gives her. I have 1,000 points left. Do you think I should give them to her? Maybe it'll touch her heart. I turned and walked away. I didn't say a word. I honestly regretted taking him down from that tree. I should have let him hang there until his brain cleared out. I decided to spend the day at the camp to rest and restock before heading back out to grind. Old Go finally stopped talking about giving away his points. He told me he was going back to the school's teleportation hall to see if any teams needed a tank. If he couldn't find a group, he'd go to the Thorny Hills to solo. It was a level 15 zone. As a level 14 shield warrior, his damage was low, but he could survive. It would just be a slow grind. As we were discussing our plans, a girl's clear voice rang out from beside us. Do you two have a fixed team? Would you be interested in joining us? We both turned around. A girl with short bangs was smiling at us. She wore light leather armor and carried a wooden shortbow on her back. She looked like an archer class. She was cute in a simple way, but her eyes were incredibly bright, like they were filled with starlight. I wasn't interested. People usually want to team up after seeing someone dominate a fight like I just had. Sorry, I said. I prefer soloing. I'm not looking for a team. She didn't seem surprised. Are you worried I'm just trying to ride your coattails because you're strong? Honestly, if we teamed up, I'm not sure who would be carrying whom. She snapped her fingers, and her basic info floated above her head. Name, Tao Tao. Level, 18. Class, Elf Ranger, hidden class. The rest of her stats were hidden, which was normal, but those 2 lines were enough. Level 18 and a hidden class. This girl was a top-tier pro. The name Tao Tao sounded familiar, too. Old Go gasped beside me. You're the hidden class Tao Tao. That's me, she said, looking quite proud of herself. I nudged Old Go. Who is she? You know her. Brother Lin, you don't know Tao Tao. Old Go whispered. You've seen the first high school combat power rankings on the forums, right? I'd heard of it. Some students with a knack for gossip had compiled data on everyone in school, classes, gear, exam scores, and ranked the top 100. It was updated every month. It wasn't official, but it was highly respected. Li Zai was ranked 10th. I used to be ranked 32nd. Though, after today, I had a feeling that was about to change. I hadn't paid much attention to the school rankings lately. I knew I was moving up, but I didn't know how Tao Tao fit into the picture. I looked at her, still confused. Old Go leaned in closer, his voice urgent. Brother Lin, she's number 2 on the newbie power rankings. Her hidden class, Elf Ranger, is broken. Whether it's speed or defense, she takes first place in every exam. And I don't mean she barely wins. She destroys everyone else. She's been a legend since freshman year. How have you not heard of her? I cleared my throat, feeling a bit awkward. I didn't want to admit to her face that I had no idea who she was. Still, something didn't add up. If her class was so powerful and she took first place in every exam, Why was she only ranked second? Old Go whispered the answer before I could ask. The person in first place is named Yunyu. Another hidden class, Void Mage. It's a utility class, so his monster clearing speed isn't great, but in a duel, he's unbeatable. Tao Tao challenged him multiple times and lost every single one. That's the only reason she's second. But honestly, everyone knows she's the best at clearing dungeons. Even top-tier universities were trying to recruit her before senior year even started. Tao Tao overheard us. She didn't look happy about the reminder of her second-place status. She snapped her fingers to get our attention. Hey, stop talking about things that don't matter. All you need to know is that when it comes to killing monsters, I'm the best in the school. Period. She turned back to me, looking smug. She clearly thought she had me convinced. So, handsome, ready to team up now? I shook my head. Sorry, still not interested. Tao Tao stared at me, speechless. I gave her a small, apologetic smile. Look, your damage might be high, but I need monsters. Having someone else around to split the experience and points just slows me down. Soloing is more efficient. I turned to walk away, but she called out again. Wait, I didn't explain myself properly. I'm not asking you to team up for regular grinding. I found a secret realm. I stopped in my tracks. A secret realm? Now she had my attention. These were rare, random dungeons that spawned in the wild. They only lasted a few days before vanishing forever. The rewards were legendary. Unlike normal dungeons that dropped random loot, a secret realm tailored its rewards to the player's class. It was the best way, sometimes the only way, to get exclusive gear or skill books for a hidden class. The drop rate for hidden class items in the wild was less than 1 in 1,000. Even though my mutated task panel gave me great rewards, I wasn't about to turn down more sword immortal gear. Nobody says no to a secret realm. Tao Tao saw my hesitation and smirked. She knew she had me. Everyone says you're just a swordsman, but I saw you fight Li Zai. You're more than that. You've got a hidden class too, don't you? Before I could answer, my task panel flickered to life. Option 1. Sneer at Tao Tao. Tell her a secret realm is beneath you. Reward, +5 charisma, Option 2. Form a team and enter the secret realm. Reward, exclusive sword immortal passive skill, sword trace, I ignored the first option. I was already handsome enough. I didn't need more charisma. But a new passive skill? That was priceless. Passive skills were always worth it, especially one specific to my class. My hesitation vanished. The balance had tipped. I didn't let my excitement show, though. I still had leverage. I looked at her, acting like I was still weighing the pros and cons. Fine, we can talk about the realm. But what about the points? We're supposed to be collecting souls for the exam rankings. How do we split those? Tao Tao waved her hand dismissively. Points. Those are probably useless. Just some weird thing the school instructors cooked up. They'll probably just trade them for cash or basic resources later. They aren't worth a fraction of what's inside that realm. If you want them, you can have them all. We've already gathered plenty. Deal, I said instantly. I didn't want to give her a chance to change her mind. I held out my hand. Let's team up. But once the realm is cleared, we go our separate ways. Fine by me, Tao Tao said, shaking my hand. I've got plenty of damage. I usually think teammates just get in the way too. A notification popped up in my vision. Tao Tao has invited you to join her party. Old Ghost stood there, looking like he expected to be left behind, but a second later, his eyes widened. He had received an invitation too. Old Ghost stared at his interface, his face flushing with a mix of shock and pure joy. Tao Tao had sent him a team invite too. He looked like he'd just won the lottery, but didn't know if he was allowed to cash the ticket. Wait, me too. Old Ghost stammered. I'm going to the secret realm, but I'm just a standard shield warrior. I'm nowhere near Lin Yuan's level. Tao Tao shrugged, looking completely unbothered. Doesn't matter. You're his friend, so you're in. Besides, the secret realm has a minimum requirement of 4 people. If we could have cleared it with just 2, we wouldn't have waited around looking for teammates this long. You're a tank, right? That works perfectly. Just stand in front and soak up damage. Don't worry about anything else. Old Go's chest puffed out instantly. No problem at all. I'll be the best meat shield you've ever seen. He was vibrating with excitement. A chance to enter a secret realm was something he never dreamed of with his current stats. As soon as we both accepted the invites, I checked the party menu. There was a fourth name already there. Since we were in the same party, I could see everyone's location on the mini-map. The fourth member was currently inside one of the tents reserved for female students. I figured, I said, glancing at the tent. You kept saying we. So, where's the other teammate? Tao Tao stretched, her short leather top riding up to reveal a waist as sharp as a blade. She looked like a live, dangerous cat. Resting. We've been grinding mobs for 2 days straight, and we're human too. She burned through too much mana and needed a nap. I stayed out here to see if I could find any solo experts worth recruiting. I actually thought about Li Zai for a second, but the moment he opened his mouth, I wanted to leave. I don't need a professional trash talker ruining my focus during a dungeon run. She looked me up and down, making no effort to hide her appraisal. You're a much better fit. You're stronger than him, and, more importantly, you're normal. Even if you were useless in a fight, which you aren't, you'd still make a great ornament just to fill the slot. I gave her a flat look, completely speechless. Tao Tao let out a playful giggle. What? I'm just being honest. Besides, she leaned in closer, dropping her voice to a whisper as she glanced toward the tent. My teammate is a total beauty. The problem is, she's cold as ice. Doesn't seem to have any interest in men at all. I'd heard that the #1 heartthrob at first high was a guy named Lin Yuan, and seeing you in person, I have to admit you're way better than those feminine pretty boys. Your skills look cool too. When we're in the realm, try to show off a bit. See if you can make my best friend act like a normal girl for once. I'm not asking her to drool over you, but at least she could stop rolling her eyes every time a guy speaks to her. I felt a headache coming on. Your friend, our fourth teammate. Who exactly is she? Tao Tao winked at me. You'll find out soon enough. Fine. I sighed, deciding not to push it. When do we head out? Give it 8 hours, Tao Tao decided. I'm exhausted and need some sleep myself. You guys should rest too. We'll meet right here, and then we'll lead the way. We agreed on the plan and parted ways. Old Go and I found an instructor, grabbed 2 sleeping bags, and headed into the boys' tent. With teachers guarding the perimeter, it was the first time I felt truly safe enough to drop my guard. I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep almost instantly. 8 hours later, I woke up to the sound of Old Go talking in his sleep. He kept muttering "Xiao-he" over and over like a broken record. I kicked him awake, dragged him through a quick wash-up, and headed to the meeting spot. When we arrived, 2 figures were already waiting. Tao Tao was leaning against a tree, talking to a girl in a long, flowing purple mage robe. The girl was tall, her back to us, with a mane of silky black hair that cascaded down to her waist like a dark waterfall. Even from behind, she had the kind of presence that would make any guy stop and stare. Tao Tao saw us and straightened up. They're here, she said to her friend. The girl turned around. Her face was striking, sharper and more refined than Tao Tao's, easily surpassing even Xiao-he in pure beauty. But there was something unsettling about her. Her skin wasn't just fair, it was a sickly, porcelain white, devoid of any warmth. Her expression was utterly frozen, radiating a chilling indifference that made the air around her feel 10 degrees colder. Sorry, hope we didn't keep you waiting, I said, walking up. Tao Tao checked her watch. You're fine. We still have 10 minutes. We just got here early. She gestured to the girl beside her. Meet my partner, Yinyu. Old Go gasped, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. Yinyu? The Yinyu? I'm actually in a party with her? What kind of insane luck is this? I was surprised too. I'd heard that Tao Tao was constantly losing to Yunyu in duels, so I assumed they were rivals who hated each other. I never expected them to be best friends. Yunyu was currently ranked #1 on the power charts. With those two leading the charge, taking down a level 20 bronze boss wouldn't be an issue at all. Tao Tao introduced us, but Yunyu didn't say a word. She just gave a slight, robotic nod. Old Go leaned toward me, looking like he wanted to ask if she was a mute, but Tao Tao beat him to it. My bestie doesn't talk much. Don't annoy her during the run. If she needs you to coordinate, she'll let you know. Old Go shut his mouth tight. He knew his place as the party's baggage, and he was perfectly happy to stay quiet if it meant getting carried through a secret realm. With the introductions out of the way, Tao Tao took charge. Her outgoing personality acted as the glue for our mismatched group as she led us out of the camp and into the dark heart of the Ghost Shadow Forest. We were heading in the exact opposite direction I had been farming earlier, venturing deep into territory where the shadows seemed to move on their own. We didn't encounter many beasts along the way. In fact, we walked for 3 full hours and only ran into 4 bloodthirsty silver willows. Tao Tao didn't even break a sweat. She pulled out her bow and deleted them with 3 arrows each. Any other student would have turned back by now, thinking this area was a waste of time. I realized that was probably why this secret realm remained undiscovered. After half a day of trekking, the thick fog finally began to thin. We stepped into a wide, open clearing. The trees vanished, leaving only a massive, ancient willow tree standing in the dead center. It was thick enough that it would take 5 people linking arms to surround it. It looked like a parasite that had sucked the life out of everything else nearby. Its branches were dense and over 10 meters long, swaying slowly even though there wasn't a hint of a breeze. The sight of it felt heavy and oppressive. "We're here," Tao Tao said, halting the group. Old Go looked around, shivering slightly. The energy here was suffocating, but I didn't see a portal anywhere. "Here? But there's nothing but a tree." Tao Tao smirked. "If you could see it, everyone else could too. We wouldn't have left it unguarded to find teammates if it wasn't hidden." Yu dropped the skill. Yin Yu gave a tiny grunt. It was so quiet I wasn't sure if she had actually spoken or just exhaled through her nose. She stepped forward and waved her hand twice. Instantly, the space in front of the giant willow distorted. A sharp wind whipped up, looking like an invisible hand grabbing a shroud and tearing it away. The mist vanished, revealing the shimmering entrance to a secret realm. Tao Tao tilted her chin up, looking proud. "Impressive, right? As a void mage, Yin Yu has incredible utility. Hiding a portal is child's play for her. Let's move." The energy in this portal is unstable. It'll probably disappear within a day. We need to clear this place before it moves on. "Let's go then," I said, nodding. We approached the portal together. As soon as I reached out to touch the shimmering surface, a warning notification flashed in my vision. "Warning, do you wish to enter the secret realm, Blood Warbler Village? Difficulty, unknown. Level, unknown. Requirement, 4 to 6 people. Current ready count, 0/4. Blood Warbler Village." The name alone, combined with the eerie atmosphere of the ghost shadow forest, told me this wasn't going to be a place of sunshine and rainbows. But I wasn't about to back down now. I hit accept. Once the count hit 4, a powerful suction force took hold. A violent gale pulled us in, and after a brief, jarring sensation of being stretched, we landed on new ground. We were standing on a narrow dirt path between endless rice paddies. The fields stretched into the darkness, overgrown with weeds that hadn't been tended to in years. Looking down the path, I saw a dilapidated village shrouded in night. There were no lights, but a sound drifted toward us through the air. It was the sound of babies crying. It was a chorus of wails, overlapping and echoing. It felt unnatural. We were still far from the village, yet the cries sounded like they were being hissed directly into my ear. It made my skin crawl. The rest of the world was dead silent, leaving only that piercing, rhythmic sobbing to fill the void. I frowned, feeling the tension in the air. I remembered I had a quest to turn in, so I pulled up my system panel. To my surprise, the panel updated with specific information about this secret realm. Secret realm, Blood Warbler Village. Abyssal difficulty. Introduction. 300 years ago, a place called Tree Warbler Village was built around a 1,000-year-old tree. The tree developed a spirit that took the form of a young woman. She became the village's guardian deity, protecting them from beasts. Eventually, she fell in love with the village blacksmith and became pregnant. During her pregnancy, she retreated into the tree to rest, leaving the village temporarily vulnerable. A spiteful Lion King arrived, seeking to kill the spirit and steal her essence. The tree's spirit protected her, and the Lion King couldn't break in. In retaliation, the beast slaughtered dozens of villagers. He gave the blacksmith an ultimatum: bring out the newborn child, and he would leave the village in peace. Pressured by the terrified villagers, the blacksmith betrayed the spirit. He entered the tree while she was weak and handed his own child to the monster. The Lion King devoured the infant's life force immediately. But he didn't leave. By consuming the child, He gained the ability to bypass the tree's protection. A bloody battle ensued inside the ancient tree. A day later, the spirit emerged, covered in blood. The villagers cheered, thinking she had won. But then, a wave of resentment exploded from her. Within days, every villager, including the blacksmith, found their bellies swelling. Sharp-toothed infants tore their way out of their stomachs, leaving behind hollowed-out corpses held together by rib bones like dry branches. The village fell silent, replaced only by the endless crying of those monstrous infants. Some say they saw the spirit pick up the shriveled, skeletal remains of her original child and vanish into the mist. No one knows if the thing that walked out of that tree was the spirit, the Lion King, or a fusion of both. Clear condition: find the source of the resentment in Blood Warbler Village and eliminate it. The story left us all in a heavy silence. Even Tao Tao, who usually couldn't stop talking, was quiet. As someone who had read countless web novels in my past life, I had a bit more mental fortitude than the others. I cleared my throat to break the spell. The goal is to find the source of the resentment, I said, my voice steady. That means we just need to find the boss. The logic behind this dungeon seemed straightforward. There were no hidden puzzles or complex traps here. We just needed to find the boss and kill it. I frowned as I looked at the interface. The difficulty of this hidden dungeon was way higher than I expected. An abyss-level dungeon wasn't something you just breezed through. The others noticed the difficulty rating too, and the air around us grew heavy. Their faces were grim as they nodded in silent agreement. In this world, dungeons are ranked from easy to nightmare. Abyss level was right near the top. The rewards were legendary, but the risk was suicidal. Usually, you need a full 10-man squad to even think about attempting an Abyss dungeon. You need a perfect team composition, tanks to soak up damage, heavy hitters for output, and supports to keep everyone alive. This Blood Warbler Village dungeon was meant for 4 to 6 people, but it was a level 20 zone. Ideally, a level 30 team would be the ones challenging it. We were severely underleveled. Yunyu and Tao Tao were level 18, I was level 17, and Go Sheng was only level 14. On paper, we had zero chance. But if we left now to call for help, the dungeon would vanish. These hidden opportunities are one-time deals. If you walk out, the entrance spawns somewhere else entirely. Tao Tao thought about it for a long time before she finally spoke. It's hard to say, she admitted. But let's just take it slow. With Yunyu here, I think we can manage. We'll clear the trash mobs one by one, find the boss, and slowly grind it down. I don't want to leave without even trying. I wouldn't be able to sleep for a month. Yunyu didn't say anything, but he gave a firm nod. I smiled. I feel the same way. Since we're already here, let's give it a shot. Wait, does nobody want to hear my opinion? Go Sheng's voice was trembling. I think 4 of us taking on a level 25 Abyss dungeon is insane. And look at this place. It's creepy. The Ghost Shadow Woods were bad enough with those bloodthirsty willows and drowned corpses, but this village is on another level. I say we pretend we never saw this place and just go home. He kept rambling, trying his best to talk us out of it. I trust Yunyu. Tao Tao interrupted him, her voice clear and steady. He can keep us safe. She turned back to us, her expression serious. This is harder than we thought. If it were a normal dungeon, Yunyu and I could duo it. But for an Abyss run, we need your help. Let's lay our cards on the table. We need to know each other's stats, skills, and roles so we can actually coordinate. I nodded. Fair enough. Seeing that we were committed, Go Sheng sighed and stayed with us. I'll go first, Tao Tao said. She wanted to show she was being transparent. She raised her short bow, and suddenly, her weapon, her tunic, her leather pants, and her boots all began to glow with a brilliant purple light. She was wearing 4 pieces of epic-grade gear. Her gloves and belt were blue-grade, likely high-tier ones. The only slots she was missing were her rings, necklace, and helmet, which made sense. Those items were incredibly rare. Even a basic white-grade necklace could cost as much as a top-tier blue sword, and the stat boosts they gave usually weren't worth the massive price tag at our level. Unless you were born into a family with a literal gold mine, you didn't worry about those yet. My gear is solid, so don't worry about my damage output, Tao Tao explained. Also, my class traits give me defense comparable to a heavy armor class. I won't get one shot. If the formation breaks, focus on protecting the others. I can take a hit. She held out her hand, and a small flame flickered in her palm. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen her use fire skills earlier. But then, with a flick of her wrist, the flame transformed. It turned into a shard of ice, then a miniature whirlwind, then a crackling bolt of lightning, and finally a clump of dense earth. She closed her hand, and the elements vanished. This is my class, Elven Ranger. I can control 5 elements. Depending on which one I choose, my skills change. She explained that she had 2 main active skills. One was an infusion skill that could buff herself or the team. Fire added burn damage to weapons. Ice provided healing. Wind boosted movement speed. Lightning added a chance to paralyze enemies. And earth created a protective shield. Her second skill was an elemental arrow with various effects. Oh, and one more thing, she said, snapping her fingers. I have a displacement skill. I can blink 15 meters in any direction. If I get cornered, I can get myself out. Don't break rank to save me. I was genuinely impressed. Your class is incredibly versatile. That's basically 11 different skills you can rotate through. Tao Tao tossed her hair back, looking proud. It's all right. But remember, I'm primary DPS. My buffs aren't as strong as a dedicated priest or paladin, so don't rely on them too heavily to stay alive. Got it. I'll count you as our main damage dealer. I turned my gaze toward Yinyu. What about you? What's your class and gear look like? Yinyu's answer was blunt and direct. I do damage, I control the field, and I survive. He pulled out a pitch-black staff. Immediately, the staff, his robes, and even the necklace hanging at his chest began to glow. The staff, his robes, and the necklace at his chest all flared with a vibrant purple light. The rest of his gear glowed blue. His equipment was actually quite good, but his explanation of his class was incredibly lazy. I stood there, a bit speechless, but Tao Tao quickly jumped in to explain. She told me that Yinyu's class was very well-rounded, focusing mainly on field control. She said I should just think of him as a weapon mage. So what exactly is his class trait? I asked. Tao Tao shrugged. It's hard to explain. You'll see it once the fighting starts. I didn't push it. It was my turn to share. I thought about it for a second and decided not to hide my hidden class anymore. After my fight with Li Zai, I'd used so many sword immortal skills that anyone with a brain could tell I wasn't just a regular swordsman. It wasn't going to stay a secret for long anyway. I'm a hidden class, I said. A sword immortal. Go Sheng's jaw dropped. Brother Lu, you were a swordsman. When did you become a hidden class? He yelled so loud he could have drowned out a crying baby. I glared at him. Fine, I take it back. I clearly overestimated the brains of some people. I didn't bother explaining the timing to him and just moved on to my abilities. I explained that I had 2 combat modes. My flying sword mode increased my damage and range, almost matching an archer. My handheld mode increased my mobility and defense, allowing me to protect the back line if things got ugly. I also mentioned my movement skill for dodging. As for gear, I added, my armor and weapon are both gold grade. The rest of my slots are empty. This matched what Tao Tao had seen earlier, so she didn't doubt me. She stared at my gold feather shell armor and then thought of my azure sword, her eyes filled with envy. 2 gold pieces. I have no idea where you found those, she whispered. Hey, can I see the stats? Let me broaden my horizons. I've never actually seen a gold grade stat panel in my life. I gave her a fake smile and shook my head. Sorry, that's not really convenient. Stingy, she muttered, pouting. With my intro done, Go Sheng stepped up, puffing out his chest. My turn. I'm a shield warrior, and my traits are. What is there to explain about a shield warrior? Tao Tao interrupted, giving him a thumbs up. Just stand in front and take the hits. Let's go. She turned and started walking, not wanting to waste any more time. Go Sheng looked like he was about to cry. Hey, just because I'm not a hidden class doesn't mean I don't have rights, he wailed. You guys are bullies. With the introductions finished, we had a basic understanding of our roles. Go Sheng was our tank, though I doubted he could handle everything alone. Luckily, Tao Tao, Yinyu, and I all had high damage output. The best defense is a good offense, and our combined firepower would take the pressure off him. If he buckled, I could step in. Tao Tao could also provide utility and buffs. We were a solid team. We pushed Go Sheng to the front and began our march toward Blood Eagle Village. The place looked like something out of a nightmare, but Go Sheng pulled out his shield and short hammer, leading the way into the darkness. As we walked, I remembered I hadn't claimed my rewards for finding the secret realm. I opened my quest panel and hit submit. My stats updated instantly. I was now level 17. My strength was 156, agility and spirit were both at 220, and my endurance was 43. With my 2 gold items, my average stats were pushing 200. My endurance was low, but the gold feather shell provided great physical defense, and my skills like Sword Heart and Moonwatching Step covered my survival needs. I also noticed a new passive skill, Sword Trace. Every time I hit an enemy, I left a mark. There was no limit to how many marks I could stack. Once a mark was applied, the skill became active. I could detonate the marks to deal 20% of my attack power per stack, ignoring defensive skills. It wasn't a massive number per stack, but it was perfect for a surprise burst. I was satisfied. Our chances of clearing this place just went up. We reached the village entrance. It was pitch black. The village used to be populated, with rows of houses and crisscrossing paths, but now it was just ruins and shadows. The sound of crying babies echoed from every corner. Go Sheng was trembling, gripping his shield tight. "Brother Liu, where do we go first?" I checked the map. It wasn't huge. "Let's do a full sweep. Start with that nearest courtyard. I hear crying inside. There's definitely something in there." Go Sheng swallowed hard and stepped into the yard. One wall had collapsed, and 3 dilapidated earthen houses stood before us. The wooden doors were rotting, revealing nothing but a void of darkness inside. I summoned Azure. The blade hovered in the air, humming with power. I planned to send it in first to scout for monsters and pull them out. Tao Tao already had her bow drawn. A small flame flickered at the tip of her arrow. She was using her fire element, ready to turn the ground into a burning graveyard. Using a flying sword to pull monsters was a solid plan. Go Sheng and Tao Tao were ready to move. Crack. We were all focused on the decaying houses. Nobody noticed the tiny sound from the dirt. Crack. Suddenly, the ground beneath Go Sheng's feet buckled. A bloody, tiny hand shot out from the soil. It gripped his pant leg with terrifying strength. A pale, mottled infant crawled out of the earth, letting out a piercing cry that sounded like a mix between a sob and a twisted laugh. It unhinged its jaw and sank its teeth deep into Go Sheng's calf. "Ah!" Go Sheng screamed. He was wearing heavy greaves, but they were only white-grade gear. They were useless against those fangs. The teeth punctured the metal like it was paper, sinking into his flesh until they scraped the bone. Blood sprayed everywhere. The creature hooked its teeth inward and ripped away a massive chunk of meat. Giggle, giggle. The monster fully emerged and crouched on the ground. It swallowed the flesh and made a sickening, wet sound. I stared at it, feeling a wave of nausea. I'd killed plenty of beasts in the Ghost Shadow Forest, but this thing was different. It was the size of a human baby, but its skin was a raw, bruised purple red, looking like it had been flayed or doused in acid. Its guts were actually leaking out, trailing behind it on the dirt. Even Yunyu, who usually looked like a stone statue, winced. I checked its stats. It was a cursed blood infant. Abyss grade, level 25. It had high strength and agility, and its passive skill allowed it to heal itself by 15% of the damage it dealt. It was a nasty piece of work. A level 25 iron grade boss would probably lose a few limbs to this thing. Luckily, its endurance was low. I was about to send Azure in to end it, but a bowstring snapped beside me. Tao Tao had already fired. Her arrow glowed with a heavy, brown light, earth element. It slammed into the infant's head, the force of the impact knocking the creature back half a meter. She didn't stop. She fired 2 more earth arrows in rapid succession, keeping the monster pinned at a distance. Once it was safely away from Go Sheng, she shifted her elemental focus. The glow turned to a sharp, whistling green. Wind element. The next arrow flew twice as fast, trailing a miniature cyclone. It tore straight through the infant's skull. The screeching stopped. The creature slumped and dissolved into a puddle of foul-smelling gore. 6 arrows. Quick, clean, and tactical. Pretty strong, right? Tao Tao tilted her chin at me, clearly looking for a challenge. I just smiled. I wasn't going to argue. Go Sheng hobbled over, clutching his mangled leg. It was a gruesome sight, but he seemed more dazed than anything. Brother Lu, Sister Tao, can we focus on me for a second? I think I'm missing some parts. Tao Tao waved her hand, releasing a burst of blue frost. The ice element hit Go Sheng, numbing the pain and freezing the wound shut to stop the bleeding. Drink a potion, she said. I'm not a dedicated healer. My frost only buys you time. Right? Thanks, Sister Tao. Go Sheng started chugging healing potions like water. Tao Tao watched him, shaking her head. You're a terrible frontline, you know that? Your reactions are too slow and your armor is trash. One bite, and you're compromised. What if a whole pack of those things shows up? Go Sheng turned pale. The thought of a dozen of those babies crawling over him made his potion taste like ash. He wasn't afraid of pain, but he was definitely afraid of ghosts. Tao Tao sighed and cast another spell. This time, a thick layer of rock encased Go Sheng's body and shield like a second skin. There, that's an earth shield. Try to actually block something while I clear the mobs. I'll try my best. Go Sheng nodded, looking a bit more like a real tank. The potions worked fast. His wound closed up, and he stepped forward again. This time, he kept his eyes on the dirt. When the ground started to churn again, he didn't wait. He slammed his shield down with a shield bash. The heavy blow stunned the blood infant just as it poked its head out. Go Sheng looked back to call for help, but two more patches of dirt started moving. 3 of them at once. Tao Tao's expression hardened. She drew her bow, preparing more earth arrows to help him manage the crowd. But before she could release, a streak of blue light hissed through the air. It was azure. It moved with the speed of a wind arrow but carried 10 times the force. The blade cut through the air, leaving a trail of mist behind it. Thwack! The first infant's head exploded instantly. The sword didn't slow down. It curved through the air, lining up the other 2 as they crawled out. Squish! Squish! It was like a needle through silk. Azure skewered both of them in a single straight line. 3 level 25 abyss-grade monsters, dead in a heartbeat. The silence that followed was heavy. Tao Tao stood frozen, her bow half-drawn. Her arrow slipped from the string and clattered uselessly onto the stones. She had seen me fight before, but she clearly hadn't realized what I was truly capable of until now. I realized then that Tao Tao didn't know me at all. She probably thought my earlier fight with Li Zai was my full power. She had no idea I was barely using 30% of my strength. If I really wanted to kill someone like him, a single thought was all it took. Tao Tao usually held the top rank for damage output in school. Killing a level 25 abyss-grade monster in 5 hits was a feat that would make most students' jaws drop. But here I was, killing 3 of them with a single strike. It wasn't even a fair comparison. Go Sheng, who had been bracing himself to lose another chunk of flesh, looked at the dead monsters in pure shock. Brother Lu, you're a god, he yelled, his face lighting up with relief. I gave him a small smile, but didn't say anything. I glanced over at Tao Tao. She caught my look, the same look I gave her when I stole her first kill, and her face flushed with frustration. What are you so proud of? She muttered, pouting. This is just the beginning. High damage doesn't mean everything. You're right, I said, my expression hardening as I sensed the shift in the air. It is just the beginning. There are a lot of them coming. Get ready. Before the words fully left my mouth, the ground in front of us exploded. More blood infants clawed their way out of the dirt. At the same time, low, guttural growls echoed from the dilapidated houses surrounding us. New monsters emerged. These weren't infants. They were taller, broader, and far more grotesque. Undead corpses with massive, jagged holes ripped into their bellies. Rotting meat and black blood dripped from their open stomachs. It was enough to make anyone lose their lunch. These were the cursed villagers. I quickly scanned their stats. Level 25 abyss-grade cursed corpses. Their strength was high, and they had a passive skill called Frenzy that boosted their speed when enemies were near. But their active skill was truly disgusting. Gut Entangle. They literally ripped out their own intestines to use as lassos to drag you toward them. There were 8 corpses and 4 more infants. 12 monsters in total, all closing in at once. A single wave like this could tear a tank like Go Sheng to pieces in seconds. I was about to recall Azure to clear the area with a wide sweep when I heard the sound of shattering glass. The space in front of the two groups of corpses suddenly distorted. Cracks spread through the air like a broken mirror, and dozens of thick, purple-black tentacles erupted from the fissures. The tentacles lashed out like seaweed, wrapping tightly around the cursed corpses. They didn't do much damage, but they had rows of needle-like teeth that latched on, pinning the monsters in place. I looked back at Yunyu. She was finally moving, her staff glowing with a dark, eerie violet light. She was a crowd control specialist. Her ability to lock down an entire flank was incredible. Cao Cao didn't miss the beat. She swapped her elemental focus to ice and loosed a volley of arrows. They didn't hit the monsters directly. Instead, they struck the ground, exploding into frost that coated the area in jagged crystals. The monsters' movement speed plummeted. With the enemies slowed and trapped, I didn't waste the opening. I flicked my fingers, sending azure whistling through the air. Two cursed corpses dropped instantly, their heads pierced before they could even groan. Cao Cao seemed determined to compete. She switched her arrows to wind, focusing on rapid-fire precision. She was fast, but the gap between us was a canyon. I needed 1 hit per kill. She needed at least 3, even with her strongest element. Despite our output, there were just too many of them. One of the blood infants used its crawl skill, gaining a massive speed boost. It screeched, scuttling toward us on all fours like a demon-possessed spider. The pressure fell squarely on Gosheng. He turned pale, staring at the incoming nightmare. "Motherfucker," he screamed, trying to bolster his own courage. He slammed his shield down in a shield bash, successfully stunning the first infant. But a second one was right behind it. With his shield skill on cooldown, Gosheng swung his short hammer in a desperate mace strike. Clang! The hammer hit the infant's head, but Gosheng wasn't built for offense. The blow barely left a scratch, and the recoil nearly sent his blue-grade weapon flying out of his hand. The infant laughed, a high-pitched, chilling sound, and lunged. Gosheng couldn't move back fast enough. The monster latched onto his leg, locking him in a forced 3-second hold. Seeing a bloody, undead infant hugging your thigh is enough to make anyone's blood run cold. The monster bit down. Cao Cao's earth shield shattered instantly, and the infant's teeth tore right through Gosheng's leg guards. Blood sprayed. Gosheng let out a panicked wail, shaking his leg like he was trying to dance the terror away. The infant didn't let go. It craned its neck back, opening its maw wide, aiming straight for Gosheng's crotch. "Not there. Not the family jewels." Gosheng screamed, his voice cracking in pure desperation. A streak of blue light hissed past his hip, trailing a mist of water. Azure punched a clean hole through the infant's skull. The monster went limp, sliding off Gosheng's leg and dissolving into a pool of foul blood. Gosheng stood there, trembling, looking at me with misty eyes as if I were his savior. "Brother Liu, if the Go family line continues, it's all thanks to you." I rolled my eyes. "If you have a son, he has nothing to do with me. Don't make it weird." Cao Cao, still firing arrows, couldn't help but chime in. "You? A family line? Focus on finding a girl who'll actually talk to you first. Look left. More coming." Cao Cao's control skills were about to time out. She called out a warning and let fly one last arrow. The wind element projectile hissed through the air, piercing the brow of the final cursed blood infant and ending its screeching life. As she predicted, the moment the last monster fell, Yunyu's spatial constraints reached their limit. The cracks in reality began to seal shut. Those writhing, purple-black tentacles retreated into the void, releasing the cursed rot walkers from their paralysis. We didn't have a second to breathe. 6 of the undead horrors were already lunging toward us. Without a word, we split the work with practiced ease. I directed my flying sword toward the 3 rot walkers on the left, while Cao Cao and Yunyu focused their fire on the right. Yunyu raised his staff, tearing a new rift in the air above him. The interior of the crack was a swirling abyss of violet darkness, echoing with a sickening, insect-like rustling. Suddenly, a barrage of magical energy bolts erupted from the void, slamming into the charging corpses with impressive force. Cao Cao played the role of the perfect controller. She swapped between ice and earth arrows, freezing the monster's feet or knocking them back with heavy impacts. She was buying Yunyu the space he needed to cycle his spells. Watching them, It was clear they had spent hundreds of hours grinding together. Despite the flashy visuals, Yunyu's class wasn't built for pure burst damage. His energy bolts looked terrifying, but they lacked the lethal bite of Tao Tao's wind arrows. The rotwalkers kept coming. One of them got too close. It reached down, grabbed its own exposed, rotting intestines with both hands, and flung them out like a fisherman casting a net. Go Sheng was still busy celebrating the fact that his family jewels were safe. He didn't notice the bloody, glistening rope of guts falling from the sky until it looped tightly around his thick neck. He let out a strangled gah sound. His shield dropped, and his hands flew to his throat, desperately trying to claw at the slimy entrails. He was only level 14. Against a level 25 abyss-grade monster, he didn't stand a chance of breaking the hold. The intestines were slick and elastic. His fingers just slid right off. The rotwalker began to reel him in, dragging the heavy shield-bearer across the dirt like a hooked fish. Tao Tao saw the danger. Her eyes narrowed as she fired an earth arrow, striking the monster's forearm to stagger it. But the blow only made the creature angry. It began pulling even faster. Yinyu didn't waste words. He flicked his staff, opening a small spatial rift right under Go Sheng's feet. Purple tentacles surged out, wrapping around Go Sheng's waist and legs to anchor him in place. It was a bizarre, gruesome tug-of-war. If Go Sheng wasn't currently being strangled to death, he probably would have cried. Between the bloody guts around his neck and the tentacles grabbing his legs, he was having a very bad day. I finished off my side of the field and didn't hesitate. I sent Azure whistling through the air, severing the cursed rotwalker's intestines in a single clean stroke. Go Sheng slumped forward, finally able to gasp for air. With the threat neutralized, the three of us poured everything we had into the remaining monsters. Within 10 seconds, the last of the rotwalkers collapsed into heaps of gray flesh. I used my sword to flick the remaining piece of intestine off Go Sheng's neck, while Yunyu retracted his spatial tentacles. Silence finally returned to the courtyard. It seemed the area was clear. Go Sheng sat on the ground, trembling. He started swearing off blood sausage and grilled squid for life, while chugging healing potions like they were water. He was the only frontline tank we had, and he was taking a beating. His stats were just too low to trade blows with these monsters, but the team needed him to soak up the initial aggro. If Yunyu or Tao Tao got caught in a hold like that, they'd be dead in seconds. Could I have tanked those hits? Sure. But I didn't want to. Some burdens are meant for the shield bearer, and Go Sheng was currently drinking his weight in medicine just to stay upright. We all handed him our spare healing potions. He looked at us with teary, grateful eyes, thanking us over and over. He didn't seem to realize that more potions just meant he'd be expected to go back out there and get hit again. Once the area was secure, I pulled out my soul collector. I swept the field, absorbing the lingering spirits of the fallen monsters. To my surprise, a single level 25 abyss monster provided 100 points, 4 times the amount of a normal monster of the same level. It was a massive haul. The monsters here were tougher, but the payout was worth the risk. After collecting the points, I led the group into the crumbling house nearby. It smelled of rot and damp wood, but we found 2 chests tucked in a corner. Inside were various crafting materials, more potions, and 3 pieces of gear. Most of it was common, but one item stood out, a level 15 blue-grade shield. Its stats were a significant upgrade over the one Go Sheng was currently using. We handed it to him immediately. All he needed was 1 more level, and he'd be able to survive a few more hits before collapsing. We moved out, maintaining our formation as we pushed deeper into the map. Our goal was the source of the resentment mentioned in the trial mission. By midday, we had cleared over half of the Blood Infant village. We had learned the patterns of the local inhabitants. The cursed blood infants were the weakest but the most annoying. They'd pop out of the ground at any moment to latch onto your leg. Since Go Sheng was always in front, he was the primary victim of every jump scare. The cursed rotwalkers stayed inside the houses. They usually appeared in groups, sometimes as many as 15 at once. However, every room they guarded contained a treasure chest. We even got lucky and found a level 20 purple-grade bracer. It was a high-tier item for archers, so Tao Tao claimed it happily. Then there was the third type, the neck-snapped rotwalkers. These were undead with heads lolling uselessly to the side, their necks clearly bitten through. They were level 25 Abyss elites. They weren't bosses, but they were incredibly tanky. Even with my high attack power, it took over a dozen strikes from Azure to bring one down. Fortunately, they were rare. We had only encountered 3 so far. By the time the sun began to dip, we finally reached the heart of the village. Our healing potions were running low. At this rate, wandering aimlessly through the dungeon wasn't an option anymore. I knew we had to find the boss, and fast. I was scanning the path ahead when a sound broke through the silence. It wasn't the usual screech of an infant. It was a rhythmic, metallic clinking. Ding, ding, ding. The sound was crisp and slow, like someone was striking iron at a steady pace. Tao Tao's ears flicked. She frowned, looking at the rest of us. Did you hear that? I think something is up ahead. Go Sheng froze in his tracks. He turned around, his face pale. What did you hear? Is it another jump scare? I listened closely. It sounds like a blacksmith at work. Whatever it is, it's a lead. Better than wandering around this map in circles. Nobody argued. We followed the sound, moving cautiously toward the source. Before long, we reached a massive courtyard. The clinking was coming from inside. Unlike the other monsters we'd faced, this one wasn't hiding in a house or waiting to burst out of the ground. It was just sitting there in the middle of the yard. It was strange. The creature didn't attack us on sight. From the side, he almost looked like a normal person, but as we got closer, the reality set in. Beneath his collar, I could see patches of shriveled, blackened skin covered in corpse spots and rotting sores. This was definitely an undead. The zombie held a rusted iron hammer in one hand and a wood-cutting cleaver in the other. He was hunched over a large, flat stone that looked like a grindstone. He tapped the cleaver with the hammer, then rubbed the blade against the stone over and over. He seemed obsessed with sharpening it. He didn't even look up when we entered. He just kept working with an eerie, singular focus. In a place as hellish as Blood Infant Village, this quiet scene felt even more disturbing than the monsters. Go Sheng let out a small sigh of relief, seeing something that at least looked human. Then, driven by either stupidity or curiosity, he actually crept forward. He leaned in, neck craned, studying the zombie's face for a long time. Suddenly, Go Sheng scrambled back to us, looking dead serious. We all tensed up, waiting for a warning. Even Yin Yu leaned in to hear his report. He looks exactly like my eldest uncle, Go Sheng whispered. I rubbed my temples, feeling a vein throb in my forehead. Are you serious right now? I pushed him aside and focused my gaze on the monster. Immediately, its attribute panel appeared before my eyes. Blacksmith Zombie, Abyss Boss. Level * 25 attributes * strength 256, agility 162, spirit 130, endurance 221. Passive skill, Undying, grants extreme health regeneration. Wounds heal almost instantly. Passive skill, Resentment Eruption. Upon death, the resentment inside its body explodes, causing unpredictable consequences. Active skill, Withered Vines. Uses internal vine roots to bind enemies for 8 seconds. Active skill, Iron Forging Hammer Style. Swings the hammer and cleaver, dealing 200% area damage per second for 5 seconds. Immune to all crowd control during this skill. My heart sank. This wasn't just another elite. It was the boss of the entire Abyss-level dungeon. According to the lore, this blacksmith was likely the man who had the child with the tree spirit. He was the source of everything. As I studied him, my system pinged. A new mission window popped up. Ding! Current mission available. Please select 1. 1. Turn and leave. Abandon the dungeon. Reward: 1 weapon blind box. Random grade. 2. Defeat the blacksmith zombie. Reward: 1 skill blind box. Guaranteed rare skill for your class. The rewards were incredible, but I could only pick one. I didn't hesitate. I chose the second option. I already had Azure, so my need for a new weapon wasn't urgent, but a rare Sword Immortal skill? That was priceless. Besides, I wanted to clear this place properly and take the full dungeon rewards anyway. I turned to the group. The boss has high stats. We need to pull this off perfectly. No casualties. I looked at our tank. Go Sheng, can you hold him? Go Sheng swallowed hard and shook his head frantically. Not a chance, Brother Lin. Those stats are insane. Even with my new shield, the level gap is too big. If he touches me, I'm half dead instantly. I nodded. You're right. Relying on you to tank the whole time won't work. Luckily, there are no minions here, so we have room to maneuver. Here's the plan. I'll be the main damage dealer and the primary tank. I looked at the girls. Tao Tao, Yinyu, your only job is crowd control. Keep him locked down as much as possible. Don't worry about damage. We're going for a flawless kill. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Tao Tao didn't hold back. You? The primary tank? If you had a full set of gold-grade armor, maybe. But you only have one piece. You're a sword immortal, a glass cannon. You'll fold the moment he hits you. Go Sheng gritted his teeth, looking like he was making a life-or-death decision. Lin Yuan, I'll do it. I'll take the hits, then back off to chug potions while you guys cycle your stuns. I'm slow, but I can try to kite him. I looked at Go Sheng with a bit of newfound respect. I thought he'd be happy to hide in the back, but he was actually willing to step up. He was a good teammate. Still, it was a suicide mission for him. I patted his shoulder. Don't push it. Bosses have high resistance to crowd control. Tao Tao and Yunyu's stuns won't last as long on him as they do on normal mobs. If you try to tank him, you won't last a minute. I gripped the hilt of my sword. I'll do it. I'm faster, so I can kite him better. Plus, I have a skill that gives me a 99% dodge rate. Trust me, kiting the boss wouldn't be a problem. Hearing my plan, Tao Tao suddenly remembered my fight with Li Zai. She recalled how I had dodged those arrows with such uncanny precision. A look of realization dawned on her. You're going to use that skill, aren't you? No wonder those arrows couldn't touch you. A 99% dodge rate? That's absolutely broken. I just smiled. I wasn't about to deny how overpowered I was. I stepped forward and tapped Go Sheng's shield with the back of my hand. Exactly. So, you stay back as the secondary tank. If the boss breaks loose and targets Tao Tao or Yunyu, you have to intercept him with a shield bash. Even if you only hold him for a single second, it'll give me enough time to reposition and draw his aggro back. Then you retreat and heal. Got it. Go Sheng nodded, looking more reliable than usual. Understood, Brother Lin. Just watch your back out there. Don't worry about me, I replied. I was confident. Between my drunken moon step and my other defensive skills, there was no way a zombie blacksmith was going to take me down. As we finalized the strategy, the rhythmic clanging of metal suddenly stopped. The blacksmith zombie froze, his half-finished blade resting on the anvil. 2 seconds of silence passed. Then, his head began to turn, slowly, inch by inch, like a broken mechanical doll. When he finally faced us, his expression was eerily blank, a haunting remnant of the man he used to be. Honestly, he wasn't bad-looking. I could see why Shu Lin had fallen for him. But when he opened his mouth, the sound that came out was like a rusted bellows gasping for air. "Where is my child?" he wheezed. "The village is full of children, but where is mine? Where is my child?" He stood up, looking down at the heavy cleaver in his hand. "Is my child inside my stomach?" Without warning, he flipped the blade and drove it into his own gut. With a sickening squelch, he sliced himself open, tearing through his own shriveled flesh. "Holy crap!" Go Sheng yelled, his voice a mix of horror and confusion. Thick, black blood sprayed onto the ground. The blacksmith ignored it, thrusting his hand into his own abdominal cavity, rummaging through his organs with desperate, frantic movements. "Not in my stomach. Where else could it be?" As he spoke, the wound began to knit back together at a visible speed. It was his passive skill, death without decay, and the regeneration rate was disgusting. I noticed that while the wound healed, it left a faint, nearly invisible scar. His entire torso was covered in those thin white lines. This wasn't the first time he'd ripped himself open to look for a baby. According to the dungeon lore, this blacksmith was the one who had handed Shu Lin's child over to the Corpse King. He was the person she hated most. From love to loathing, Shu Lin's rage must have been boundless. Even after turning him into this undead monstrosity, she forced him to endure the agony of self-evisceration over and over again, every single day. This dungeon was truly twisted. Before I could finish the thought, the blacksmith started walking toward us. "My child isn't in me, so it must be in you. I need to see if you have my child." He suddenly accelerated, charging at us like a rabid animal, swinging both his cleaver and his massive blacksmith hammer. Tao Tao didn't hesitate. She drew her bow and let fly a volley of elemental arrows. You disgusting creep. Get away from us. Nobody has your kid. You're making me sick. An arrow slammed into his chest with a loud thud. Tao Tao had poured all her indignation and pity for Shu Lin into that shot. However, as an abyss-level boss, the blacksmith had massive crowd control resistance. The earth elemental arrow, which usually sent monsters flying, only made him stagger back half a step. Tao Tao clicked her tongue and immediately switched to ice arrows. The slowing effect worked, but only barely, reducing his speed by about 15%. I couldn't just stand there, so I stepped forward and launched my azure sword. The blade bit into the blacksmith's rotting flesh. It looked soft, but it was incredibly tough. I managed to leave a deep gash, but a one-shot kill was out of the question. My damage output was far higher than Tao Tao's, and the boss felt it. I instantly became his primary target. Ignoring the arrows raining down on him, he pivoted and swung his heavy weapons toward my head. I led him toward the center of the courtyard, keeping him away from my backline. I danced around him, maintaining a precise distance while my sword circled him in the air, carving out chunks of meat. Tao Tao switched to wind elemental arrows, buffing my movement speed. I felt light as a feather, easily outpacing the lumbering giant. But the courtyard was small. I was eventually backed into a corner. I was ready to use my dodge skill, but Yinyu beat me to it. She cast Void Rift, the same skill that had locked down the previous wave of corpses. Ghostly tentacles erupted from the ground, pinning the blacksmith in place. Even though he eventually ripped through the restraints, the opening was all I needed to slip past him. For the next 20 minutes, we fell into a rhythm. With Tao Tao and Yinyu cycling their stuns and slows, I kept the blacksmith at bay. Whenever things got too close for comfort, I relied on my 99% dodge rate to literally walk through his attacks. I gambled 4 times, moving right through the arc of his hammer, and won every single time. As long as I didn't have the worst luck in history, he wasn't going to touch me. But there was a problem. I had landed over 200 strikes on him, but he just wouldn't stay down. Every time I opened a wound, it healed seconds later. To kill him, we had to dump enough damage to overwhelm his regeneration all at once. But I was the only one dealing real damage. Tao Tao and Yinyu were completely occupied with crowd control, and Go Sheng was busy just trying to keep the girls safe. At this rate, we weren't fighting a boss. We were fighting a giant, self-healing meat shield. I had no idea how much longer we could keep this up. Tao Tao saw the problem, too. Between firing off shots, she shouted over the noise of the battle. She told me we couldn't keep fighting like this. The boss was healing too fast, and since we didn't have a priest, we had no way to apply a healing reduction debuff. It was an uphill battle that was draining us dry. Even Yunyu, who usually stayed quiet, finally spoke up. She suggested we retreat. I didn't stop moving for a second. I told them there was no need to run. I just needed a little more time, and I could one-shot him. The team looked at me like I'd lost my mind. One-shot a boss this big? It sounded like a bad joke. We had been fighting for ages, and the blacksmith zombie still had at least 60% of his health left. For a player under level 20 to deal that much burst damage was practically impossible. Even the strongest single-target mage spells couldn't do that. Besides, if I could kill him that fast, why had I waited so long? They didn't realize I wasn't bragging. They couldn't see what I saw. The blacksmith was currently covered in over 200 stacks of my sword mark passive. If I detonated them now, it would be the equivalent of hitting him 40 times simultaneously. That kind of raw power was more than enough to vaporize him. I had been dancing around him all this time just to make sure the stacks were high enough. I didn't want to leave him with a sliver of health only for him to regenerate it all back. With 200 layers, the job was done. I took a deep breath, ready to trigger the explosion. But the zombie must have sensed the danger. His stomach suddenly split open. A blood-red vine, moving like a strike from a viper, shot out toward me. My reflexes were sharp. I immediately activated my moon-watching step to dodge. It didn't work. Whether the skill was a guaranteed hit or I had finally hit that unlucky 1% failure rate, the vine slammed into me. It felt like a living thing, wrapping around my body in less than a second. I looked down and saw the bloody plant tightening its grip. This was the withered vine skill. It wasn't bad luck. It was a forced crowd control move that couldn't be dodged. I was stuck for 8 seconds. To make matters worse, I couldn't even use my skills. My heart sank. The blacksmith was already raising his massive hammer, charging straight at me. Tao Tao reacted instantly, casting an earth elemental buff that coated me in a layer of protective salt rock to absorb the impact. The hammer came down with the force of a falling building. I let out a muffled groan as the blow sent me flying backward. The pain was sharp and white-hot. I felt like at least 2 of my bones had snapped. Since I became a sword immortal, I had never taken a hit this bad. It made me realize I had a glaring weakness. I had no crowd control immunity. I had mobility and high damage, but if I got pinned down, I was just a punching bag. I needed to fix that later. Right now, I had bigger problems. I hit the ground hard, and the blacksmith didn't follow up to finish me off. Instead, he turned his sights on Tao Tao and Yunyu. I yelled for Gosheng to get in there. He didn't say a word, but he charged forward with his shield raised, doing exactly what an off-tank should do. He slammed his shield into the zombie, but it barely flinched. The blacksmith swung his cleaver, creating a shower of sparks that nearly split Gosheng's shield in 2. The impact was too much. Gosheng was tossed back several meters, coughing up blood as he hit the dirt. With our defender down, the girls were completely exposed. I was still trapped by the vines, unable to detonate my sword marks. I was losing my mind with frustration. Tao Tao and Yunyu weren't helpless, though. As the boss closed in, they both burned their survival skills. Yunyu waved her staff, opening a void rift beneath her feet. Ghostly tentacles pulled her into the darkness and spat her out 20 meters away. It looked terrifying, but it worked just like a mage's blink. Tao Tao didn't retreat. She ran toward the monster. With a light, agile hop, she leaped high into the air and stomped directly onto the blacksmith's shoulder. The force pushed the boss back slightly while she used the momentum to backflip away, landing safely in the distance. They were safe for the moment, but the blacksmith remembered who the real threat was. He turned back toward me, intent on finishing the job. Tao Tao fired a barrage of ice and earth arrows to slow him down. Yunyu opened more rifts to trip him up. The zombie didn't care. He went into a frenzy, swinging his hammer and cleaver in a wild whirlwind. He smashed through the arrows and ripped through the tentacles like they were paper. He was using his iron forging hammer technique, a move that dealt massive area damage and made him immune to all control effects. It was a nightmare. I cursed myself for not detonating the mark sooner. I couldn't move, and I couldn't cast. I had to tank this next hit. If I survived, I could kill him. If I didn't, we were all dead. My stamina stats were low, but my gold-grade armor had high defense. I gritted my teeth, preparing for the impact. Just as the hammer was about to crush me, a massive shadow lunged forward. Gosheng had crawled back to his feet, screaming as he shoved his shield between me and the monster. Gosheng's body slammed into his shield right in front of me. I froze for a split second, watching him stand there like a human wall. "Can you even handle this?" I shouted. "Get out of the way." He didn't listen. It was like his ears had stopped working. He slammed the edge of his shield into the dirt with such force that a cloud of dust exploded around him. "I'm your damn grandfather," he roared, his teeth grinding together so hard I heard them click. In that heartbeat, the blacksmith zombie arrived like a meat grinder. The cleaver and hammer fell in a whirlwind of steel, smashing against Gosheng's shield. Even though it was a purple-grade piece of gear, it wasn't meant to take a boss's ultimate skill head-on. Every collision sent sparks flying, and with every spark, a new crack webbed across the metal. Usually, one hit would have sent Gosheng flying. But right now, he looked like a god of war possessed. He stayed rooted to the spot, absorbing every ounce of kinetic energy through his arms. He didn't budge. The force was so immense that he and his shield were slowly pushed backward, his heels carving 2 deep trenches into the earth. He didn't retreat a single step. He and the shield were one solid rock. I realized then that if he moved, I was dead. Nobody expected him to last, but he held that line for 3 full seconds. In theory, the blacksmith should have been able to kill him 5 times over in that window. I don't know how he stayed upright. Then, the shield reached its limit. Under the relentless weight of the iron forging hammer technique, the durability hit 0. The purple gear shattered into 1,000 jagged shards. Gosheng coughed up a spray of thick blood, his strength finally failing. The skin between his thumbs and forefingers had split open, leaving his hands a bloody mess. He looked terrified, staring at the boss as if he didn't know what to do next. That's when I reached out. I placed my hand firmly on his shoulder. Gosheng looked back, his eyes lighting up with instant relief. The 8 seconds were up. The crowd control had worn off. Good job, Gosheng, I said, my voice low and steady. Leave the rest to me. I gripped his shoulder and yanked him behind me. With a flick of my wrist, I activated my sword kinesis. The azure sword, which had been hovering at a distance, streaked through the air like a bolt of lightning. Sword mark. Detonate. As the blade descended toward the blacksmith's head, I triggered the stack. Over 200 sword marks had been carved into that monster's soul. In an instant, pillars of blue light erupted from the zombie's body. They converged in the air, forming a massive, ghostly silhouette of the azure sword that loomed over the entire village. It looked like a mirage, blindingly bright, as it slammed down alongside the physical blade. The wind pressure exploded. Under the weight of that massive spectral strike, the blacksmith zombie didn't just die. He was erased. His frenzy stopped instantly. His rusted cleaver was less than an inch from my nose, but I didn't even bother using my movement skills to dodge. I knew the math. The damage from the marks was more than enough to end him. The giant sword shadow slowly faded away like a dream. I raised my hand, and the physical azure sword flew back into my palm before I stored it in my inventory. The blacksmith stood rigid for a second, then his body tilted back and crashed into the dirt. His health bar was gone. Suddenly, pillars of golden light washed over us. We all leveled up at once. Gosheng, being the lowest level, got a massive boost from the boss's experience. He jumped 2 full levels, hitting level 17. The level-up surge acted like a healing potion, knitting his wounds together and bringing some color back to his face. He wasn't fully healed, but he wasn't at death's door anymore. He seemed to forget the pain immediately. He stared at the spot where the boss had stood, his mouth hanging open. Holy crap, Brother Lin. You actually one-shot the boss? He scrambled to his feet and rushed over to me. What was that giant sword skill? It was so cool. The damage was insane, but man, the style. What giant sword? I shot him a dry look. If I knew you were going to talk this much, I wouldn't have pulled you back. I should have kicked you toward the zombie and stabbed you both so you could die together. Die together with that thing? No thanks, Gosheng said, shaking his head frantically. It was clear the sight of that zombie swinging its hammer like a maniac had left a permanent scar on his psyche. Tao Tao and Yunyu walked over, joined us. Tao Tao couldn't hide her grin. She wasn't even surprised by my damage anymore. She was looking at Gosheng. Not bad, lover boy. I didn't think our secondary tank would be the one to save the day. If you hadn't stepped up, we really would have wiped here. Yunyu was expressionless as usual, but she actually nodded. You did well. Gosheng practically started floating. He rubbed the back of his head and laughed for a long time. Well, I couldn't just be a deadweight forever, right? I'm the tank. If the moment comes, I've got to make sure Brother Lin doesn't get a scratch. Then he looked down at the broken shards of his shield, and his smile died. Man, my first purple piece. I didn't even have it for a day, and it's trash. I laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. Between men, you don't need a long speech. It's fine. I owe you one. I'll find a way to get you something even better. Really, Gosheng didn't even try to be polite. I'm holding you to that. You gonna get me a gold-grade shield? I'll get you a hammer to the head, I joked, rolling my eyes. Tao Tao tugged on my sleeve, her expression turning strange. Actually, you might really be able to get him a hammer. Look at the boss's body. Did he drop one? I realized then that this wasn't a simulated dungeon. In the wild, bosses dropped real loot. I looked over at the blacksmith's remains and saw 2 glowing orbs of light hovering there. Inside one of them, I could clearly see the silhouette of a short hammer. Gosheng nearly bit his tongue in excitement, his neck straining as he tried to get a better look. He was the only one in the group who could use hammers. The others stayed back, waiting for me to do the honors. It was clear they saw me as the leader now. I walked forward and reached into the light. The glow faded, revealing a plain, slightly rusty-looking iron hammer. It looked exactly like the one the boss had used. The handle shimmered with a purple hue, a purple-grade weapon. I shared the stats so everyone could see. Wraith Iron Hammer, grade, purple. Level requirement, 20. Class requirement, Hammer Mastery. Attributes: attack plus 120, strength plus 120, stamina plus 34. The stats were insane. Every attack had a 25% chance to inflict resentment, stunning the enemy. It even had an active skill called Iron Hammer Dance. For 5 seconds, the user would swing their weapons in a whirlwind, dealing 200% damage every second while becoming immune to all crowd control. Gosheng looked like he was about to faint from pure joy. This was a top-tier subweapon. The raw attack power wasn't the highest, but for a frontline tank, that didn't matter. The massive boost to strength and stamina made it a masterpiece. With those 2 extra effects, Gosheng was no longer a third-rate student from First High. He was elite. If he hit level 20 before the college entrance exam, this hammer alone would guarantee him a spot in a top-tier university. I looked at Yunyu and Tao Tao. I assumed there's no issue with who gets this. Yunyu stayed silent, but Tao Tao spoke for both of them. No problem at all. Gosheng stood in front of you and protected our core damage dealer. He earned it. Besides, he's the only one who can use it. I nodded and handed the Wraith Iron Hammer to Gosheng. He clutched it to his chest, practically stroking the rusty metal. Thank you, Sister Tao. Thank you, Xiaoyu. Thank you, Brother Lin. I won't let you down. I'll be the strongest shield you've ever seen. I kicked him playfully, telling him to shut up with the victory speech. Then, I reached for the second orb of light. The glow faded to reveal another purple-grade item, the Flame Quiver. It required level 20 and a barrelated class. It boosted attack, agility, and spirit. More importantly, it added a burning effect to every shot, dealing 10% extra damage over 5 seconds. It also buffed fire-based skills, increasing single-target damage by 20% and AoE range by 50%. This was another god-tier find. Quivers were rare drops, barely more common than jewelry. Most archers carried purple bows, but were stuck with basic white-grade quivers. This was a perfect match for Tao Tao's class. I handed it over, and she tucked it into her inventory with a sigh. It seems this secret realm drops items tailored exactly for us, Tao Tao said, though she looked a bit guilty. But this boss was stingy. Only 2 items. Gosheng and I are set, but you and Yunyu got nothing. Especially you, Lin Yuan. You did all the work. You dealt the most damage, and yet we're the ones walking away with the loot. I just smiled and shook my head. It's fine. You 2 got lucky with purple gear. Who knows? Maybe my luck is building up for a gold grade drop later. Tao Tao rolled her eyes. Wow, look at you, hyping yourself up. But honestly, your mouth is like a curse. You said Gosheng would get a hammer, and he did. Fine, if you can predict a gold drop for me, I'll pay you $200 as a thank you fee. No way, I joked. Predicting gold gear costs years of my lifespan. If I'm going to summon a gold item, it's going to be for me. Why would I give it to you for $200? Cheapskate. Tao Tao turned away, huffing. She didn't know that while the blacksmith hadn't dropped any equipment for me, my harvest was actually much greater than theirs. I quietly opened my quest panel and turned in the objective. A skill blind box appeared in my inventory. I made an excuse, telling them I was going to search the blacksmith's house for hidden chests. I slipped into the dark inner room and opened the box. A skill book appeared in my hands, and as I read the description, my breath hitched. This wasn't just a skill. This was legendary. Skill book, Green Lotus Sword Song. Requirement, Sword Immortal. Level, 15. Effect, forcefully removes all crowd control effects from the user. The user transforms into sword energy, flashing through a designated area to strike enemies 10 times. Each strike deals 120% attack damage, plus an additional 20% bonus. The user is invincible and immune to all attacks and control effects during the duration. This was exactly what I needed. Being stunned by the blacksmith earlier had been a wake-up call. I realized how vulnerable I was without a way to break free. Now, I had a skill that was sheer dominance. If I'd had this earlier, I would have ground that blacksmith into the dirt without breaking a sweat. The damage was terrifying too. 10 strikes at 120% each meant a total of 1,200% damage. Plus, each hit triggered my passive sword mark. If I stacked 10 marks and detonated them, that was another 200%. A total burst of 1,400% damage in a single move. No other class could compete with that. I learned the skill immediately. The book turned into a streak of light and surged into my body. I felt the power settle into my soul. After a quick search of the room to confirm there were no actual treasure chests, I walked back out to rejoin the group. The blacksmith was dead, but the trial wasn't over. There was no exit portal and no notification of completion. The source of resentment mentioned in the quest was still out there. This was a level 4 to 6 abyss-level secret realm. The real nightmare was just beginning. It felt wrong. A final boss only dropping 2 pieces of gear was a joke. But before I could complain, a shrill, piercing scream tore through the air from outside. I bolted out of the house and back into the courtyard. What I saw made my stomach turn. Go Sheng and the others were huddled in a corner, faces pale, hands clamped tightly over their ears. They weren't the ones screaming. The sound was coming from the blacksmith. The corpse I had just killed was twitching on the ground. His upper body was twisted like a wet rag, his hands clutching his head in a sickening, unnatural grip. Black mist was erupting from every orifice, his eyes, his nose, and every single stab wound I had carved into his flesh. He looked like a human whistle, and the scream was the sound of that dark energy being forced out of him. The black smoke billowed upward, spreading across the sky and rolling over the entire village like a thick, suffocating blanket. I braced myself, waiting for a debuff or a poison notification to pop up, but nothing happened. The mist didn't seem to affect us at all. I glanced at the blacksmith's stats. They were gone. He didn't have a health bar or a nameplate anymore. He wasn't a monster. He was just a vessel. I ran over to the group, shouting to be heard over the screeching. What happened? I thought he was dead. Tao Tao kept her hands over her ears, leaning close to my head to scream back. We don't know. We were just talking, and this thing sat up and started howling. Yin Yu and I tried to hit him with skills, but the black mist blocked everything. Please, just kill him again. Make him shut up. My eardrums are going to pop. Go Sheng wailed. I bit my lip. If their skills couldn't touch him, mine probably wouldn't either. We had to figure out what he was doing. Yin Yu's face was twisted in pain and disgust. He muttered something, his voice barely audible under the noise. I watched his lips carefully. For words. Resentment eruption. That was it. I remembered the skill list now. It was a passive ability that only triggered after the blacksmith died. We had ignored it, thinking the fight was over. The description had been vague. Explodes with resentment upon death, leading to immeasurable consequences. I stared at the twitching corpse, waiting for him to turn into a meat bomb. But he didn't explode. After 3 or 4 minutes of ear-splitting screaming, he finally went silent. His body slumped, shriveling up like a popped balloon, though his limbs still gave the occasional, mindless twitch. I unsheathed my sword, ready to turn him into mincemeat just to be safe. But then, a new sound started. It started as a giggle, then erupted into a chorus of nightmares. Infant wails, the guttural roars of rotting corpses, and the flapping of wings echoed from every direction. Go Sheng peeked over the courtyard wall and immediately pulled back, his face white. Brother Lin, we're dead. There are so many of them. I didn't need him to tell me. I could see them now. Hundreds of monsters were swarming the courtyard. Cursed blood eagles circled above, while cursed corpses pressed against the walls. I even spotted 5 or 6 broken well corpses, abyss-level mini-bosses, leading the charge. The scream hadn't just been noise. It was a dinner bell. The monsters began tearing at the earthen walls of the courtyard. Once those collapsed, we'd be surrounded with nowhere to run. The resentment eruption called every monster in the zone to us, Tao Tao said, her voice trembling. That dead bastard. He's trying to take us with him. We can't hold this many off. Forget clearing the dungeon. We need to blast a hole in their line and run for the entrance now. Yin Yu nodded grimly. Go Sheng looked like he was ready to bolt already. I stood there for 3 seconds, silent. Then I smiled. No need to run, I said calmly. Stay close. I'm about to show you something cool. Go Sheng's voice cracked. Brother Lin, this isn't the time for jokes. If those walls go down, we're shredded in 5 seconds. They didn't believe me. They couldn't. How could one person kill 100 high-level monsters in 5 seconds? They were about to find out. Crash, the walls crumbled. A flood of rotting flesh and dark energy surged toward us. A broken well corpse lunged first, throwing out a mass of tangled hair and vines to bind us. I stepped forward, my face cold. I gripped the hilt of the azure sword and swung it in a wide, sweeping arc. Skill, evening sword, calm waves. A flash of light erupted, shaped like a perfect full moon. The incoming vines were shredded instantly, unable to even touch my clothes. But the sword light didn't fade. It transformed into a shockwave of sword energy, rippling outward in a violent circle. The calm waves effect kicked in. The energy surged through the crowd, tearing through the blood eagles in the air and the cursed corpses on the ground. The damage was staggering. Even for level 25 abyss monsters, it was a death sentence. I realized I could end this in a single strike. Hundreds of beasts flooded into the courtyard, surrounding us from every side. It was the perfect moment to unleash my skill. I didn't hesitate. In less than 2 seconds, the sword energy from Evening Sword, calm waves radiated outward. It swept through the air like a growing ring of light, erasing every monster in the yard. Tao Tao and the others stood frozen. To them, it looked like I had simply swung my sword once, and 100 abyss monsters had vanished into thin air. The shock on their faces was priceless. Just a moment ago, they were worried our chances of survival were less than 10%. Now, I had flipped the entire situation with one move. Was this the power of a sword immortal? I could see the awe in Tao Tao's eyes. Even though she had been trying to compete with me in damage output, she couldn't hide her respect now. The courtyard was silent, filled only with blood and corpses. Well, almost all of them. 5 neck-broken corpses were still standing. The calm wave's energy hadn't killed them instantly, but it had left them with massive, gaping wounds. They were barely clinging to life, their health bars down to a sliver. I wasn't about to let anyone else steal the experience points. I gripped the azure sword, the golden fish carvings on the blade glowing with a sharp light. I moved like a blur. Skill, sword step. I lunged behind the first monster, leaving a golden afterimage in my wake. Then I did it again, and again. 4 rapid strikes, for golden shadows trailing behind me as I zipped between the remaining targets. With the final dash of the skill, I flickered back to my original position. The golden shadows vanished. I sheathed my sword and turned to face Tao Tao and the others with a grin. So, pretty cool, right? As soon as the words left my mouth, 5 heavy thuds echoed behind me. The neck-broken corpses hit the dirt simultaneously. Each dash of my sword step dealt 300% damage, making quick work of the survivors. In less than 10 seconds, I had wiped out over 100 monsters, including 5 elite bosses, using only 2 skills. That was true power. That was style. Golden light washed over my teammates as we all leveled up at once. Man, that was incredible. Go Sheng was practically jumping for joy. He had officially become my biggest fan. Brother Lin, those 2 moves, seriously, do you want us to bow down to you or something? Tao Tao walked over, her eyes wide. She didn't even bother mocking Go Sheng's fanboy behavior. That skill was insane. When we were sharing our class traits earlier, you never mentioned you had a massive area of effect attack like that. I rubbed my chin, pretending to think. Didn't I? I'm pretty sure I said that when I have a sword in my hand, I have some self-defense capabilities and can protect the backline. Tao Tao's expression soured. Listen to yourself. You call that a self-defense skill? You cleared the entire map. I nodded, completely shameless. Yeah, if I kill everything, isn't that the best way to protect you guys? She was speechless. Honestly, I wasn't lying. Evening Sword, Calm Waves was technically a defensive skill. It just happened to become a weapon of mass destruction because the Azure Sword was so overpowered. With the threat gone, I didn't let the opportunity go to waste. I pulled out my soul collector and began gathering the essence of every fallen beast. My total points skyrocketed to 36,000. I started thinking about our next move. The blacksmith zombies' resentment eruption had clearly pulled every monster in the area to us. We had killed them all, but the source of resentment mentioned in the dungeon quest was still a mystery. I was about to suggest we search the village for more monsters like the blacksmith when Gosheng shouted from across the yard. Hey, come look at this. The blacksmith isn't dead yet. We rushed over. The blacksmith zombie was in terrible shape, barely looking human anymore, but he was still moving. He was crawling slowly across the ground like a tattered plastic bag caught in the wind. Gosheng was poking him with a stick he'd pulled from a fence. The zombie didn't even react. It just kept crawling in one specific direction. Get away from him, I warned, half joking. Careful he doesn't jump up and take a bite out of you. Go Sheng yelped and scrambled back several steps. Tao Tao looked down at the crawling creature, her brow furrowed.